I believe I'm going to get letters for this live stream. Hello everybody, it is the Dark Conservatarian, and I am here finally with a interview stream. Instead of a news stream, we are doing an interview stream that we have not done in quite a while here. And as for the guest for today, we have AircraftSparky with us. Say hello, AircraftSparky. Greet yourself to the audience.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? Look, I'm AircraftSparky. You can find me on YouTube. You can also find me on twitch.tv/AircraftSparky. And over there, we do things like throw commies out of helicopters. We make fun of a lot of things. And, of course, we like to do a little bit of art while we groove to some music. But tonight, we are talking about Israel, nationalism, and whatever else comes on. And all I got to say about that is, oh, no. Oh no, I am messing up. I am messing up completely. And you know what that means? It means I'm going to have to punish myself later. But that's okay. Oh, me.
That
move this over.
Not the link that I meant to send. Damn it, come on.
You got to love it when things don't work out exactly the way they're supposed to. But hey, it is what it is.
Oh, wait, I see why it was done there. Somehow my browser there caught the your channel link instead of my stream link. So, oh man, I am like not even a boomer, and yet I'm boomering it up right here, folks. Oops. But anyway, and now the appropriate link is sent out. So, yes, right now we are just going to be having an interview stream chatting about what AircraftSparky has mentioned here, and that being primarily about Israel, and go on some other subjects as well, probably about theology and maybe some things relating to the future of the Republican Party, something along those lines. And I got myself, if you guys can see right here, a good old cup of joe in my Don't Tread on Me mug, because fuck whatever AircraftSparky or Kieran Holstein have to say about coffee bad tasting in a recent live stream. It is freaking great, in my opinion, nonetheless.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Just saying.
Dark and bitter. Just how I like it. Just like my soul. Maybe not as dark as yours, but nonetheless. So, to sort of hit off the conversation here a bit, what would you say that your stance is exactly on the issue of Israel, Sparky? Like how you feel about them, and how you feel about their handling of Hamas and other such issues?
Well, I mean, so give me one moment, because I actually need to switch this over. I made a mistake and forgot to switch over my, there we go, my mic. Yeah. Okay, so let me go ahead and break this down. So my stance is actually very easy. I am a nationalist conservative, meaning that I believe that every country should take care of themselves, no one else, and every country has that right to do that. With that being said, I believe that the Jewish state has every right in the world to exist, and they have every right to run themselves the way they deem fit. So, when it comes down to the idea of the Palestinians, look, America has been stuck in forever wars for several decades now. We're looking at, over 30 years that we have been over in the Middle East, fighting wars that are not ours to fight. And so with that being said, it is time to bring home the American troops. It's no longer time for us to reach out and show other people how to run their country, because our country is fallen to hell. Why is it fallen to hell? Because we're too busy taking care of other people. When the plane is going down, you need to make sure that you actually affix the mask onto yourself before you place it on other people in the system. And we have lost track of that idea. So with that in mind, Israel has every right in the world to exist however they want to, and it's not up for the international community to actually tell them how to exist. So, yeah.
All right, so that is the basics of it, and you would of course say that Israel is mostly, if not completely, justified in their retaliation against Hamas, in spite of the inadvertent and unfortunate civilian casualties that follow along with it.
Well, when you're using them as a human shield, of course they have every right.
Right.
And if humans actually get caught in the way of that, innocent civilians,
I mean, look, you have to blame that on Hamas. It is not on Israel to make sure those people are safe. It is on Hamas and the Palestinian government to ensure that these terrorist organizations are not launching these attacks from areas such as schools, mosques, and hospitals.
Yep, it's definitely an unfortunate collateral damage, but Israel is like stuck between a rock and a hard place. You know, either they can like let themselves be killed, be it military and civilian alike, or they can target and retaliate against whatever military sort of assets that are inside Hamas, even as they are like using civilians as shields. But the most unfortunate part about that is that in spite of the human shields, the full context being that Hamas is using their own civilians, or not really their own civilians, but you get my point though, because they aren't technically their own civilians, but whatever.
Actually, they are, because Hamas was actually elected by the people of this fictional country called Palestine. It is not actually a country. America will sit there and claim things. Well, we admit that these people exist, but this place as a country, yeah, we're not really fully in support because of their terroristic ties, is really where that all boils down to. With that in mind, at the end of the day, we are looking at individuals in America that are actually rooting for terrorist organizations, which I find to be disgusting. The fact that we have sitting congresswomen and congressmen who will sit there and defend the heinous acts of these terrorist organizations because, oh, they have less power than the Israelis. Hey, look at it like this. When the settlers came to America, and I hate to break this to anyone out there on the internet, but colonialism was probably the best thing that ever happened to this world. So I know that's a spicy take by a lot of people would say, but hey, come talk to me. I'll tell you why. When you look at these people actually voted for these individuals to quote unquote govern them, and when number one priority on their list was the complete and utter destruction of the Jewish people within the country of Israel, they're not innocent in the end. Sure, the children are, but the adults who voted are not. You get what you deserve sometimes. And if you're going to allow people to launch attacks from hospitals, churches, mosques, whatever, you reap it. You reap it hard, you reap it long, and people like me will laugh because we understand the actual laws of war.
Right, and what I was saying is that in spite of the full context, people will just be looking at the stat of killed civilians within the landmass that we're just going to... Palestine, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that damn well likely Palestine is not a real country. But I'm just going to use Palestine from here on out as a shorthand. I hope you at least understand that part, Sparks. But all the more innocent people in Palestine who aren't actually under Hamas, that are not actually fighting for Hamas, they end up in the crossfire, end up getting killed, and that just inflates the innocent civilian stat that the media likes to harp around without engaging in and analyzing, the full context of the situation. Like, and you got talking about elections a little bit earlier. Wasn't there another election? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are like two different enemies that Israel is fighting in that very area, both Hamas and Palestine, and then there's like another player, or is it Hamas as well in the Gaza Strip? Like, correct me if I'm wrong.
Hamas exists in the Gaza Strip. They also exist in the West Bank. And one thing that they like to say is from the banks to the sea, all that land should be free. I say from the West Bank, from the East Bank to the sea, that whole land is Israeli. And so a lot of people want to sit there and go, well, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights are not Israel's land. Well, yes, it was. It was conquered land. That is a land that in 1947, when the British actually pulled out, stopped protecting Israel after they ceded that land to the Ashkenazi Jews that were persecuted in Europe during the Holocaust. They pulled out immediately. Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt all attacked Israel, and they fought them for 7 days. Israel pushed them back, and they captured that land because that was the land they used to invade Israel. So
7-Day War, was that in the 60s or was that a whole lot earlier?
no, that was 1947. Then you had another war where Egypt actually came up through the Sinai Peninsula, and Israel took all that land over to the channel, the Suez Canal, and then said, you know what? Don't attack us anymore. We'll let you have your land back. And I think that was actually a very good move. But the Gaza Strip is Israel. The West Bank is Israel. The Golan Heights is Israel. It is recognized, was recognized by the United States as such up until the point Joe Biden came back into power, because even though many Jews tend to vote for Democrats hate Jews. So, or at least
there's like two wars that happened in the mid 20th century, like the Yom Kippur War and the 7-Day War. Am I correct in that?
Yes, Yom Kippur War is the war where Egypt actually tried to invade Israel.
Right. I don't remember the full history of that war, but I remember like watching this one documentary where it was explained that one very vital attack that Israel did on Egypt, like it was super early morning, Egypt wasn't even launched from their airport, and Israel decided to come in with a massive airstrike first, and they ended up crippling severely the Egyptian Air Force.
Of course, strike first, strike hard, strike often, make people cry. Make fun of their penis when you're done.
Right. And so the question that I was actually want to bring up in regards of Gaza Strip versus West Bank, there was one election, like there was one area, like you said, in which that they did elect Hamas, the leaders of Hamas, as the leaders of the landmass, the political leaders of the landmass, as well as they being like by default the military leaders at the same time. But there was one other landmass, was it the Gaza Strip, on which the election actually failed, and that was one of the things that built up to the recent Israel versus Hamas conflict. Am I getting my ducks in a row right there?
Well, the recent issue that happened is during the holy month of Ramadan, there was a launch of rocket attacks from the Gaza Strip. In response, Israel kind of overreacted to a point when they surrounded a mosque over at Jerusalem, prevented people from leaving, and then proceeded to throw flashbangs in there. I mean, just really, it was in bad taste. But all the same, I'm not going to tell them how to run their land. Look, if you're going to be attacked by people, attack their hold their supporters accountable, make them hate life, and maybe, just maybe, they'll stand up against the people that are causing the problems.
It was a mosque inside Israel too, right?
It was in Jerusalem.
It was in Jerusalem.
Yes, the rightful capital of Israel.
So essentially Hamas was doing their own bit of interventionism, because they were like, striking in on foreign land for reasons that were not like directly that wasn't going to be a direct attack to anybody who was actually living and of the West Bank. So, yeah. I understand that bit of context. One of the other reasons of the recent conflict was also because of, I cannot remember what the name of the neighborhood was, but a whole bunch of Palestinian heritage civilians in Israel got kicked out of their homes. That was one of the things that kind of ticked them off. Like, yeah, no, I don't really care either. I mean, I'm for private property rights. I mean, maybe it's a sad thing in general that people get kicked out of their homes, but nonetheless, those landlords, they have a bit of a business to run. If you're going to keep on skipping out on paying rent, well then, sorry, a business owner has got to do what a business owner's going to do. A business owner's going to do.
The problem is it wasn't a rent thing. What it was is the Israeli government actually decided that, hey, this land is an expansion for Jewish settlers, and they kicked Palestinians out of their home. I'm not going to say that's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's their land. It's not my place. It's not the United States' place to tell another country how to operate.
Wait, I thought it was like private landlords that were doing that sort of stuff, and it was because that the Palestinian heritage civilians were shirking off on paying their rent. That was the reason why.
No, it was literally they were just expanding their settlements. I have no problem with Israel pushing the Palestinians out of their country altogether.
Well, then
So-
I may have to look back on what I said on my recent episode. Well, not most recent episode. It was actually a month ago or something like that. The one recent episode of Strike Force that I did talking about the Israel versus Hamas story, because I thought that it was because of private landowners, landlords. Actually, if I had to guess, I'm pretty sure that is what the story was. I mean, do you have a source that goes saying that it was the government that actually got involved and decided to kick them out of their own homes, the tenants out of their homes?
Well, it's just so the deal is when it comes to anything
Because,
Israel,
in
when
my
it comes to
opinion,
Israel and Palestine, what you have to actually look at every time is, first of all, you have to look at where the source is coming from. So I look at usually both Jewish sources and Arab sources, and then I usually look in between, find where the truth is.
right, because
So-
I want to just add a little caveat, like, well, not a caveat necessarily, but anyway, because if what you say is like fully true right there, well, then that's kind of paints them in a lesser of a light than what I originally thought as far as Israel goes in the recent conflict.
I referred back to my original statement: every country has a right to run themselves.
Well, yeah, I understand. Like, no country should be getting in on interventionism unless another nation is actually going to, actually is planning or building up or is about to invade them, which Israel was not doing that with the Gaza Strip specifically at the moment. I mean, those Palestinian heritage civilians, they still lived on Israeli land ultimately. So, but all the same, I thought that it was a whole lot more justified than that even.
Well, I mean, look, it's the reality is that if you really want to know the entire truth of what's going on, the best way to figure that out is usually to go there yourself, because you're not going to get unbiased news. It doesn't matter where you go to. So there is hard divisions in this. If you look at most Western German journalism, you're going to find a lot of anti-Israeli type rhetoric in all that. When you look at a lot of the Arab, you will find a healthy bit, but actually less anti-Israeli bias in their journalism.
I want to add very quickly, if I could.
Hmm.
The one source that I read where I got the implication that it was private landowners that were kicking Palestinians out of their landlording houses or whatever. It was not from a source that was biased, or at least I didn't think so. They weren't showing their bias, anyways. Wasn't a mainstream media source.
Who was it? Who was it from?
Well, let me go back and look. Actually, it should be easily enough.
Because if you look at Israeli Jewish news and whatnot, you're going to have a bias there. If you look at the BBC, they have a very strong anti Israel bias. So when you look at
Wasn't BBC.
You look at CNN, you're going to have a strong anti-Israel bias. If you look at MSNBC, same. If you want a strong pro-Israel stance, you're going to find that at Fox News. You're going to find that with Sky News, who are both of the parent company, Fox News Corp. So it's really a matter of where you go. Even like I would say,
Here's
9 times out of 10, Al Jazeera is actually pretty straightforward, believe it or not, when it comes to Israel, which is an odd thing because they tend to be more. They are they Omani? No, they're not Omani. They're a Qatari-based Arab publication, and but the Muslim world regards Jews as people of the book, and so they tend to be a little bit more charitable with some of their interpretations of things. Although they do a lot of shit against the Jews traditionally. So it's one of those things.
So the sources that I read for my information on this episode of Strike Force that I just linked in direct DMs, by the way, or direct messages, direct DMs. That's redundant. Toronto Sun and National Review were the two sources that I read in regards to that. National Review, the truth about the Sheikh Jarrah eviction.
So
National Review. Go on.
National Review is actually very pro-Israel when it comes to their stance. The Canadian publication you talked about, the Toronto, I'm not familiar
Toronto
with them.
Sun.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with them, so I can't tell you what their bias is normally.
In the title, it says Hamas's use of human shields is a war crime. So they're at least heavily critical of Hamas on that area, whether or not they are even marginally critical of Israel.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look through their catalog to really get a good idea. But it's become such a polarized topic that it's really hard to find actual legitimate news on it. Everything's going to be thrown from a slant. And I will tell you right off the bat, I automatically have a pro-Israeli bias. I am a Messianic Jew. So I am going to automatically give the benefit of the doubt to Israel. I've also worked alongside the IDF. So I know the people who were in those branches. Not every one of them, mind you, but I got a good feel for who they are as a people. And it's not only Jews who are in the IDF, and Israel is probably the most accepting country in the Middle East. And so I'm going to be a little bit more forgiving of them than I will be most other countries there.
So,
gotta be honest.
Sort of ask in further, I just thought about this, ask in further about Sheikh Jarrah, by the way. That was the name of the neighborhood, just to tell everybody. Sheikh Jarrah was the name of the neighborhood of which Palestinian heritage civilians were kicked out of their homes, their rental homes. Do you personally, because I know about this personally, but do you personally know about the Palestinian heritage civilians shirking off on paying their rent in those rental homes?
No, I don't know enough about that to speak about that with true informed intelligence on that.
Okay.
Because normally, look, what I look at when I'm looking at what's going on in Israel, I just look at who's fighting who for what reason. I don't really dive into it all that deep because, yet again, I'm a conservative nationalist who actually believes that America needs to stick their nose out of everyone else's business. If it is a not America stand, I don't care.
America stand. You're making America stand sound like a Sharia law type country.
Well, look, every other country but America is not America stand. So it could be not America stand to our north, to our south, to our east, or our west, and I could not give two shits.
Stand
No
America.
forgiven.
But anyway.
Yeah, all I care about is America. America first. No, America only.
But if I may add on the earlier point, though, I will say that whoever was the exact party that ended up kicking out the rental tenants, it still seems to be at least somewhat justified on the front of they weren't paying their rent. The fact that it was the government coming in, the Israeli government more specifically, coming in and saying, hey, get out of here, you're not paying their rent, makes it slightly less justified than if it was the private owners that were doing it themselves. But all the same, there is at least an understandable motive for kicking them out in general.
I will tell you this: there may actually be records where these Palestinians were not paying their rent. I don't care. Ultimately, I will tell you this: that the Israeli government will do whatever it is that they deem necessary in order to expand the Jewish settlements in Israel because they believe it is their land and therefore they run it as such. And a lot of people don't like that. I don't care if they commit human rights issues. Not my problem.
If Israel or Palestine,
Israel, China, wherever, don't care. Because, look, if you want to talk about that kind of stuff, then basically, it's unless you're willing to commit American soldiers to it, which I'm not. I'm not ever willing to commit an American soldier to fight another country's battle. I don't think there's any discussion to be had there. If people want to go, oh well, it's immoral what's going on, it might be.
So as far as your non-interventionism goes, obviously you've stated clear as day that you don't want any military interventionism committed against these countries unless they're directly attacking us. Does your non-interventionism even extend to that you would prefer that people not even speak about when another country is acting immorally? Like, for example, China persecuting the Uyghur Muslims.
I have no problem with people talking about other countries if they want to. The problem that I have is when they try to sit there and try to make some moral justification for the intervention of America on them. That's really where I draw that line, because
On
about 20 out of 10 of the people, and I am saying it that right. So 20 people, so 2 times the people that are actually bitching about it will not go actually do anything about it themselves. So until they nut up and go out there, put on the military uniform and go over there and do something their damn selves, I don't believe they should really be advocating for the use of American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines abroad.
so on
Because
that
I
note,
have been over there and it's not pretty.
So on that note, then, who exactly is advocating for military interventionism in Israel from here in the United States, anyways? Because I haven't heard about that one.
Oh well, all you really
Quite
have to
honestly.
do is just watch the Twitter feeds of anyone who happens to be in the squad or any group like that, any leftist group. They actually want us to go over there and protect the Palestinians from the evil, mean Israeli Jews. So, there's people who are actually talking about that we should actually get into some type of argument with China because of their treatment of the Uyghur Muslims. I say just slap frickin' sanctions on them and
Right.
hold our neighbors that are allies accountable, and let them know, if you trade with these people who are doing this thing, if you're really worried about that, let's do this from a political side. And you make
Right.
it where our allies cannot even engage in trade with these people. You punish that country through sanctions.
Yeah,
You don't use military. Military is not the answer every time.
my compatriots who do like go criticizing China consistently, they are not like advocating for a full-on war. But one of them in particular, I guess I'll just mention him because y'all who watch the show know who he is. Loudmouth Reviews. He goes saying repeated times that he thinks that there should be sanctions, tariffs, whatever is necessary as far as trading with China, and maybe even criminal fines with anybody who exploits and utilizes slave labor from China. Maybe even go further than that, but not
If that's
war,
the
not
case,
war.
You would actually have to impose fines on about 80% of large corporations here in America, because America has this real bad problem. We are addicted to slavery. And
I
by
would have
that,
to ask him for clarification on that belief if that's actually the full extent of what he believes. But
so if you're sitting here with an iPhone or an Android or basically any cell phone right now, you are part of the slave trade. It is what it is. Almost every piece of electronic equipment that is actually consumed here in America is made in China. And in China, at places like Foxconn and stuff, they actually rely on what would essentially be considered to be slavery today. So you're contributing to modern day slavery as you bitch about slavery.
when you're talking about slavery, you're talking about what are you defining as slavery in regards of China? Are you including both the sweatshops and the Uyghur internment camps, or just the Uyghur internment camps?
Yes, because you
All
have
of it?
sweatshop. Yes, you have all of it. Because when you
Okay.
have people that are working for like $1 or $2 a day, we pay our prisoners better than that.
Hmm.
So you've got to understand what you're seeing going on in China is a form of modern day slavery. It is not the open air markets like what you see in Libya, but it is a form of slavery going on. And the American consumer is so worried about if they can afford their $12 fucking latte that they will sit there and they would rather outsource all their work to a foreign country for individuals who will work for pennies on the dollar, if not penny on the hour, in
With
order
the-
to get things done at a cheaper price.
With the sweatshops specifically, like obviously I know that the Uyghurs, they are like kept against their will to be doing this slave labor, but the sweatshops specifically, are they actually being held at gunpoint to keep on working, to not even so much as quit their job, like the next hour that they get off the job?
It's cute that you think that people can actually quit in a command economy. So it's
No, I'm just asking
the
for
reality-
full context right there.
the reality of it is these individuals are actually forced to work in these conditions. Are they? They're not even worthy of modern 20th century frickin' working conditions when we had 14-year-olds working there. A lot of your Nike shoes and whatnot have probably actually been stitched together by a 6-year-old in China. So It just is what it is. Yeah. One of my guys in chat, Poor John's Brew, aka Igor, says sweatshops have suicide nets.
Right,
in a lot of the
I
Chinese
knew about
factories.
that. I knew about that.
So,
That
yeah.
that you cannot be jumping out of a window if your shift's not up yet, and you'd want it to be done or something like that.
Definitely, because we all know that.
China is asshole.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
And by the way, I guess to tell in my chat here, JC Armitage, LOL, what the fuck? Where'd the Alex Jones clip come from? That it would be AircraftSparky with all the fanciful clips, who played the I don't want them putting chemicals in the water to turn the freaking frogs gay, and of course, China is
I will
asshole!
eat your ass.
And
Yeah,
I will eat your
use-
ass.
I use soundboards.
Come on, man.
It just is what it is, man. Because look, we need to actually have more of a morning show type feel. We need to have a little bit more fun with our discourse, because some people get really bent up on a lot of stuff. I mean,
I need
look,
to like develop my or arrange, not develop, arrange my own soundboard sometime for my show.
yes,
Maybe that
you
would
know, I
improve
mean,
on the quality.
well, it's not really that really would improve on the quality. What improves on quality, of course, is trying to. You're a very factual person. You're a very straightforward person. And
Try to be.
I try to be that way as well, but I also try to have a little bit of fun with it, because we can't take ourselves too serious. And just like Monday night when we were having our discussion and we were talking about how great it is to throw commies out of fucking helicopters, and you were obviously getting upset. Like, bro, you're taking yourself too seriously. Just relax, man. You got to realize that sometimes good things come in jest.
Well,
and we can actually talk
lem-
about serious things while making fun of them all at the same time.
let me say this. I'm kind of retarded. So,
Oh, like that?
I'm kind of retarded.
Yeah.
yeah, that just to say that as far as me being hardly able to differentiate seriousness and sarcasm with one another, that's what I'm referring my comment to there mostly. But you get my drift.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I have a chat comment question here actually, and by the way, the live chat is actually kind of dead on my end as I'm streaming here on YouTube. What exactly is your criteria for determining what makes a country, or rather a government state, which is what I think you mean, legitimate or not? Asks JC Armitage. I do not know if that question is. That question might be for both of us actually.
I actually get the spirit of the question. I believe so. So here's the way I look at it. When I say that Palestine is not actually a real country, first of all, they haven't taken the land, they haven't held the land. So in order for you to actually, hey, what's up, Lonely Wolf? When it comes down to it, if you are looking to actually determine yourself to be legitimate as a country, there is only one way to own land in this world, and it's not through actually the power of the person, it's through the power of force. The reason why all land is really considered legitimate is because it can be backed up with the use of force to protect it.
So hasn't Hamas
Invade
like
the United States
forceful?
and find out, fuck up and find out.
Hasn't Hamas?
Israel has done that as well.
By that logic, then hasn't Hamas like forcefully, enforced their own jurisdiction, their own ruling over that landmass?
Not really. Israel allows them to exist. If Israel really wanted to turn the monster on, they could run every Palestinian out of that country, and it would be a damn thing any of them could do to stop it. And because it would be a force of Jews, Arabs, and everyone from Israel, from the IDF, would actually just clear those people out. Just be like, nope, get out.
So, full disclosure here, everybody. I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to Israeli politics. So, to ask on that note, if Bibi Netanyahu is so evil as primary leftists, but even a few forms of right-wingers, for that matter, all like to say, he's evil and whatnot, why is it that he doesn't just go ahead and actually enforce the rule and actually execute the Hamas leaders and all the, maybe even all the soldiers and whatnot?
Oh, Israel, look. So, do you know how Bibi Netanyahu actually came to prominence?
I actually do not, like I said.
Okay, so in the 70s, there 70s and early 80s, there was a large amount of kidnapping and things like that. You would see aircraft taken hijack, and this was a phenomenon happening all around the world, including the '84 Olympics in Germany. You see Delta Force, Army Green Berets, Mossad, and everything having lots of drills, anti-terrorism drills before the Olympics. Um, there was an Ethiopian airline that was taken hostage going from Israel to Ethiopia. Bibi Netanyahu was actually the commander of the Mossad group that went there and executed all 12 of those terrorists on board within a 5 second in a 5 second attack on the aircraft. They coordinated an attack so well they killed 12 terrorists without hurting one civilian, and it happened live on TV. It was beautiful.
And so that's how he got popular, and then he decided a little bit later to run for, I take it's prime minister, right? Not president?
Yeah, he was prime minister.
minister.
He is no longer prime minister. Now someone from a quote unquote opposition group is now the prime minister. I cannot remember his name.
Really?
He's probably one of the first historic Mossad agents.
So Netanyahu is no longer the top dog leader of Israel, is what you're saying?
No.
Well, that's news to me, because I thought he got reelected like 1 or 2 years ago. I guess they must have some very short terms, either that or what happened.
Bibi was the prime minister for well over a decade. He actually was just pushed out through parliamentary actions this year, and Israel has suffered for it. But hey, that's they're set up on a parliamentary system, unlike America. So I mean, reap what you sow, I guess.
All right. A little bit of a odd segue here, but so actually, since we're on that note, what is your opinion on Mossad, actually? Because I hear a whole bunch of people go saying that they're a rather dubious group, in the same way of CIA, that people criticize CIA and whatnot, and go like trying to attach them to 9/11 and so forth. What is your opinion on all that?
So I don't buy into the fact that they had anything to do with 9/11. I will tell you that the CIA wishes they could be anywhere near as effective as Mossad. Mossad is probably one of the scariest groups to ever to even bother try to get in contact with. They are known for assassinating world leaders, political dissidents alike.
So they're an intelligence group, kind of like the CIA.
Yeah, the CIA wishes they were that good, though.
All right.
I mean, our Delta Force honestly cannot compare to the lethality and sheer amazingness of operations as the Mossad does. I give my hats off to them. Those men and women are freaking scary.
So this is me mentioning it right now is the first time that you've ever heard any mention of them being connected to 9/11, though. Like, I'm not saying that I believe it, just asking.
Look, when it comes down to it, anytime anything bad happens to America, someone wants to blame Israel for it. I've seen no intelligence that would actually sit there and say that Mossad had anything to do with it. Mossad has conducted actual investigations and stuff like that against American citizens on U.S. soil. They have violated several United States laws on several occasions, but so is our own CIA. So, I mean, I would not sit there and say that Mossad is America's friend, but all the same, they are doing Israel's bidding.
So Mossad is a group that is independent of the Israeli government?
No, they work for the Israeli government.
Okay.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Israel has
there.
never done anything against America. Okay, they have. They have on several occasions, but nothing that is war worthy. In my chat, Igor says, "Don't we send special forces to train Mossad?" Yes, we do, and we share a lot of information with Israel. We also share a lot of information with their intelligence agencies, to include Mossad. But Mossad they're a frenemy. We know not to trust them too much. It is what it is.
All right, but to sort of ask again, because I'm sorry, I kind of talked over you when you're giving your answer, but this is the first time that you ever heard of anybody mentioning connections of Mossad to 9/11?
You're not the first person I've heard that from. It's just not credible.
All
With
right.
the information that I've worked with, the organizations that I've worked in throughout my adult career, I have access to certain type of intelligence, things like that. I do hold a top secret clearance. I do not talk about anything related to those clearances, but I have not seen anything that suggests that Mossad had actually anything to do with 9/11.
All right. Cool. And I guess another question, sort of relating to this, because you mentioned you're not going to sit here and say that Mossad hasn't done anything against the U.S. What's your opinion on the USS Liberty attack that I've heard mentioned? Like, I only heard about it like within the recent 2 years. Haven't actually looked into it myself, unfortunately. But what's your take on that?
Let me look because I'm not actually. Let me see what I can see real quick.
Is it something that you vaguely heard of or looked up or whatever?
Navy technical ship by the Israeli. Just trying to
All
find
right.
out when this was. When did this happen? This happened in 1967, so I don't even care. That's
Okay.
that's pretty much. I've heard the term USS Liberty. So I don't know anything about it. It hasn't happened within my lifetime, so it's nothing that I've really tracked. Um,
Understood. And yeah, my opinion is that if it is really a boo boo on Israel's morality or ethicality or whatever at the time, well, then I'll understand that, yeah, they attacked us, and maybe we should have done something about it at the time. But comparing Israel to back then to Israel right now is like comparing the United States in the 1940s to the United States in the 1980s. You had two entirely different agendas going on, you
okay,
know?
so this happened around the time of the Yom Kippur War, as far as I can see. So they were actually in active fighting against Egypt, and supposedly it was just by glancing at what I'm reading, they're saying that it was misidentified. I mean, that does happen. If it actually
Supposedly it
was
was like a
misidentified, I
red
don't know.
it was like a red flag to try and get the United States involved in the Yom Kippur War.
Well, the last thing they would really want to do is have the United States involved, because if it was an Israeli attack, if it was an attack by the Israeli, then that would not end up well for Israel. So, it just doesn't make
You
sense.
meaning us would retaliate against Israel?
Yes, if you attack anything United States related, you have earned the whole hellfire and fury that will come down from it.
And that's a kind of a question relating to somewhat to theology, but I got at least two more questions relating to Israel that we'll get back to here in a bit. But on that note, diving a little bit into theology, isn't the belief that the Christian as well as Messianic Jew, or maybe Messianic Jews, they like feel a little bit different in this area, but isn't the Christian belief that if okay, I'm not going to state this, ask this as a question. I'm going to state it because I've always heard that, according to the Christian belief, if anybody screws around with Israel, then God will bless them, at least allegedly, and whoever attacks Israel will feel the full wrath. The full God-infused wrath of Israel, or even the direct wrath of God Himself. What do you think on that belief? You could probably articulate that point a lot better than I just did right there.
Well, if God is with us, then God must be against anyone who be against us. Is kind of the idea where that comes from. If that is actually
And
true,
by us, you're meaning Israel, right?
well, us as in basically. Well, I mean, if you're talking about Israel, they would claim that yes, God would be with them because they claim to be God's chosen people. And if you're looking at the actual Torah and Talmud, you could actually back that up. However, with many people in the Christian sphere would say that since the Jews actually rejected Jesus as the Son of God, that they have no longer become God's chosen people, and that the Christians have. Now, I'm not sitting here arguing one way or the other, but you would think that if the Jews are God's chosen people, wouldn't God be on their side?
Right. That's basically the question, the thing that I was getting at right there is seeing as how Israel is at least allegedly God's chosen people. Anybody that stands against them would be retaliated by Israel, and ultimately God would shield them from those people attacking Israel.
Yes.
At least that's the belief, anyways. But you're not so sure if the people of Israel are actually God's chosen people or not.
Well, no, it's actually written in Genesis that the Jews are God's chosen people, but there is discussion within the theological community that because they rejected Yeshua, who is a son of God, Jesus Christ, as you would probably
Right.
know him. Yeshua is his Hebrew name. Um,
Right.
that they lost favor with God. I'm not God. I like to think that I have a pretty decent relationship with the entity known as God, but it would be blasphemous for me to pretend to know God's will.
Okay, but it's just a little theory that they pose. They don't
It's
actually.
just a logical. It's a logical. That's all it is. It's just a logical exercise, and
The
a
the
logical
Christians who say
exercise
that
will
they're
tell you.
the Christians who say that they are not God's chosen people. It's just a theory. They don't actually cite verses to back up that theory.
No, there are no verses to say that.
Okay.
It's just a chain of logic. It's going down the rabbit hole.
Well, then, independent of any Israel justification sort of debate or subject or whatever, I'd say that specifically on this theological point that they're kind of full of crap, in my opinion, anyways.
Well, I don't question the will of God. I just act as God imposes upon me.
Well, maybe there's a possibility that God hasn't revealed something to us on that front, but I have confidence that if he did ordain it that way, that, hey, you're once my chosen people, oh, but you rejected my son, now you're no longer my chosen people, that he would have had it written down through Paul or someone else like that. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah.
But if there's like no scriptural backing for it, well, then I'm thinking to myself, it's irrelevant. Or it's not it doesn't hold weight. Let me put it that way.
I think there's a big problem with people trying to rationalize God, and many things in religion are irrational. So that's actually part of the function of faith. So that's where I run on it.
All right. So on my end, is that a snake mug? Yes, it is. Only Wolfen. Hello, Night Shift in the chat. Not that. Night Shift 10,000 says they tested the Navy SEALs versus Israeli commandos once, and the Navy SEALs waxed them.
Israeli commandos are not Mossad.
All right, fair enough.
Mossad is not actually considered part of the IDF. They are a separate intelligence group that is there is no equal as a force, as a fighting force in Israel.
All right. Night Shift 10,000. Wait, is there still any conspiracy that Israel was responsible for 9/11? I'm going to be quite honest. Those whole connecting Mossad to 9/11 theories, those I haven't read anything in quite a few years espousing that opinion. Anything from anyone else espousing that opinion, anyways. So it might be irrelevant and outdated, and people are not espousing it en masse anymore, so, but who knows. God told Abraham that I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, says no one in the chat. Literally, the guy's name is no one. But anyway, caught up on that front. So,
Yeah, it's all right there. It's all right there. Stuff.
Complete Jewish Bible, is that the Messianic Jewish Bible?
Yeah, it's a Messianic Jewish Bible.
Okay. Out of curiosity, like, what are the differentiations as far as verse interpretations go between that and, say, a King James?
Well, the King James is actually mostly translated from Greek, where the Messianic Jewish Bible is actually a combination of Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew. So there is a lot of issues with all the different interpretations. I tend to like the messianic style interpretation because it incorporates Hebrew and Aramaic. which Aramaic is a dead language, doesn't exist anymore. And there is a lot of nuance that can be found in the
Does
actual different wordings. Because, like in Greek, if I remember right, there's something like 5 different ways to say love, and the words used can describe the intensity of said love. So,
Interesting.
and considering that you look at things like the King James Bible, when it was actually being translated for the people, King James was just recently denied divorce by the Pope.
At the
So,
time that he had written the King James Bible.
well, he didn't write it. What he did is he paid monks to write the Bible, to interpret the Bible.
Yeah,
From
flimsy
Latin.
wording on my part, but you
Yeah.
get what I mean.
So he had
Not literally
monks in
him.
his area actually interpret the Bible from Latin and write it into common English. And so when you're looking at things like translations from anything to English, there's going to be limitations. There really are. And when you incorporate extra versions of these verses and books, you can actually expand to get better context because of the words chosen to be used.
Right.
Ask him about the Book of Enoch. Alamo, I don't know enough about the Book of Enoch to really be able to. So I don't want to travel down that route. You know what I'm saying? So it's really just it's a choice. So I grew up on the King James Bible. Later, looking at the NIV Bible, I when I converted over to Messianic Judaism, I started reading the Messianic version, and when I looked into the historical context of how everything was interpreted, I liked that. I thought it may be more accurate. As far as
NIV.
we know it, no, the Messianic Jewish version.
Okay.
So I just see it. I just see it as potentially being more accurate. I could be wrong. The only way that we could actually know is to actually sit down and have a cup of coffee with Yeshua himself, or God Almighty. And I'm pretty sure that your head would probably explode if you did that.
Right. But I mean, I'm sure that the Messianic Jewish Bible is probably more accurate, or at least has more resources in order to be accurate in regards of the the wider variety of language being incorporated for the extra context and whatnot. But my problem with the NIV Bible, one of my specific problems I can mention by example, is the one verse. I think it might be in Leviticus. You know, the one that goes saying that if you have an unfaithful wife, well then give them this potion, this water, the filthy water, and their thigh will rot. At least according to King James, anyways. In the NIV interpretation, that is their baby will rot, or something else like that. So essentially describing an abortion. But when you look at King James version, it's not really an abortion that is happening right there.
Well,
You know about how all the militant anti-theists would like to pull that verse in order to say that, oh, pro-lifers, you're in the wrong. God is actually pro-abortion, so stop being pro-life.
yeah, God's not pro-abortion though.
Yeah.
That's easily explained when you look at things such as the I don't know, the 10 Commandments. Just thou shalt not murder. Just gonna say, so yeah.
No mercy.
No. Yes. Thou shalt not murder, except for furries, right?
Yes, furries are not people. You'd be wrong.
But so anyway, I guess to rewind this conversation back to the Israel specific debate, there's at least 2 more questions I have on that front. Like, what is the final solution that you advocate for Israel in their handling of Hamas, the West Bank and Gaza Strip?
That is an interesting choice of words. I would never use that phrase when discussing the Jewish state or anything Jewish related.
Final solution.
I'll give you the most generous interpretation, and I will say none of my business.
You know what? Okay. Well, Yeah, none of our business, of course. And as far as final solution goes, oh god, why did I write that down? Word it that way in my
Thank you,
notepad here.
Gizmo Fisherman, for the tidbit
But
donation.
fuck, because that's like some that's some Nazi-esque sort of wording,
Yeah,
right?
that's a little hint to a little Nazbowl stuff, and well, I'm not interested in that, and I hope you're not either.
Oops. Yes, of course not. I fucking despise white ethno-states, as people within my fan base will know quite firmly. Like even like a few years ago, I had done a live stream once with the Humane Mind, responding to Richard Spencer's points, arguing for a white ethno-state in that debate against Sargon. You know, it's quite an interesting live stream. One of the best live streams of 2018, I would say. But no, I guess that was a flimsy or clumsy wording on that question. But you remember in the one group chat where we were okay, so a little bit of a story behind this interview, y'all. Originally, this was supposed to be a debate that I was supposed to moderate between AircraftSparky and Wes Savage, but Wes Savage, he ended up not wanting to participate anymore. And so
I trolled him into oblivion. Let's just call it for what it is. I mean, look.
Yeah, a little bit too soon, in my opinion.
I knew what I was doing, and you knew what you were doing when you put him in a group chat with me.
Honestly, I did not. I should have handled that situation differently. But nonetheless, I will end up having a one-on-one live stream interview, whatever. And it's probably going to get a whole lot more debatey on that live stream compared to this one, since me and Savage probably disagree more on Israel than me and Sparky right here.
I was actually expecting a lot of pushback. I figured you would have at least feigned pushback just because you want to challenge my ideas, or at least I would think you would want to. And I mean, I was completely ready for that.
Well, maybe possibly we'll get a little bit more into the challenging area, but to sort of in that group chat, as I was mentioning, this is the reason why I was mentioning it, because you said if like you were the ruler of Israel, if you were the prime minister of Israel, excuse me, if you were Bibi Netanyahu, that you would have pushed out every single Palestinian heritage person in that landmass?
I would push them into the sea, and whatever happened to them would be. I do not care.
But in all seriousness, you would like deport them out of the land just in general?
Yes, I would.
Whatever country calls first dibs on them.
No country would actually call dibs on them. And that's one of the biggest problems that we see with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, is the fact that the UN has allowed the Arab nations to actually utilize the Palestinians as political pawns. So here's the deal. Most people don't comprehend about the Palestinian-Israel conflict. The word Palestinian, where does that actually originate? Well, it actually originates from the word Philistine. Who were the Philistines? The Philistines were originally the Romans. When they came over and took over the kingdom of Israel, they were referred to as Philistines. Of course, the Romans thought that it was funny, and they named
very quickly,
Palestine.
Very quickly, by the way, Lonely Wolf in my chat says, "Thou shalt not post NSFW in the wrong Discord section."
That is correct. That is a term of service still. So yes, please.
But you go on.
Basically, it rolls down that Rome actually named the area Palestine, mocking the Philistine label. And later, the Brits, when they took that land from the Ottomans, when they broke up the Ottoman Empire, they referred to that region as Palestine, because that was a historical name of that region. They didn't want to call it Israel because, well, they didn't want to have any reference to the kingdom of Israel. The Arabs actually call Palestinians Palestinian, or Palestine is kind of tongue-in-cheek for nomad, because the people who are the ethnic Palestinians live a nomadic life. They've never held land. They basically spend their entire time going from different area to different area to grow crops and do trade or whatnot. They have never held land. They have never owned land. They have never ruled over anything. So they have used that as kind of a cudgel to beat Israel the entire time. They tried to beat them militarily. They failed miserably. I mean, how embarrassing is it when 5 separate countries cannot defeat one small group of Jews that basically have almost been completely wiped out through the Holocaust, and they still lost. How incompetent can you be? Seriously. So they want to use the Palestinians as a cudgel to beat the Israelis over the head because they feel like their land was taken away. And the only claim that any Arab has to anything Israel is Jerusalem, is because that is where the death of Muhammad, all hellfire and pineapples up the ass be upon him, because he was a pedophile, and pedophiles get the gun first. I'm just saying. And I hope Satan shoves a pineapple up his ass every minute of every day. But that is where he died and supposedly ascended to paradise. Actually, he descended into hell. But that's just my opinion. But if you read the Quran, the reason why they fight so much over Jerusalem is because, well, Islam is a religion that is essentially based off of Judaism. The Prophet Muhammad, who supposedly came up with the religion of Islam that happened 700 years after the death of Christ, when it was originated, it's basically all bastardizations of Jewish and Christian stories. He died in Jerusalem, and that's their claim. They used to pray towards Jerusalem.
So where their prophet dies, they have a claim to that jurisdictional area?
That's what they're basing their entire claim off of. The Arab claim is off of where their prophet died.
That's kind of ridiculous. I don't even think that Christianity has made such a claim in regards of any prophet in the Bible.
Well, of course. But they used to pray towards
Hokey.
Jerusalem until you see Muhammad make the first Hajj down to Mecca. He traveled from Medina down to Mecca to settle a dispute, and then that was the time that the Kaaba was discovered. And from then on, all Muslims stopped facing Jerusalem to pray and started facing Mecca. So, just for a little historical context, yeah, they're Arabs. They're just greedy. They're
Mecca. Excuse me for my ignorance, but where exactly is Mecca?
It's Saudi Arabia. It's in southwestern Saudi Arabia.
All right, interesting. So, in further extent, conversation about my earlier question, as far as if you were like Prime Minister of Israel, deporting Palestinians and whatnot, would it be just specifically Palestinian heritage people, or would you deport, all Muslims from that area? Turkish people, Egyptians, Jordanians, all of them?
Well, I mean, if I was actually the person running Israel, looking at the Jewish faith and everything that which they stand for, I would allow Christians and Muslims, as long as they didn't try to usurp the rule of the Jewish people there, because that is their rule. That in Israel they have a law that only a Jew may ascend to the highest office. There will always be a Jewish state. That is the way they have set it up. I do not blame them because of the historical wrongness that have happened to them. So they have rules that Muslims and Christians, Zoroastrians, people of all faiths and religion may live within Israel.
But the exception with Palestinian heritage people is,
well, they're trying to usurp the Jewish supremacy rule. There is what it is. They want to take over the country. They have single-handedly, first-handedly voted for the complete destruction of the Jewish state and all Jews within it. So why should they be allowed to exist there?
and this also being referring to the group chat again. You said that you believe that election was like 110% legitimate.
I don't care if it's legitimate or not.
I mean, if it's
I'm not there to vet their voting process. You're asking me a hypothetical based on if I was the prime minister.
Sure.
Looking at this at a political expediency level, I would sit there and go, without a doubt, it's 100% legitimate, and I would utilize that to commit genocide or move them.
I mean, sure, we in the U.S. cannot do anything to find the evidence as to how legitimate or not that election was. But if the evidence was found, whatever the method be, through some Israeli bureaucracy or even some vetters that live within the Gaza Strip or whatever, if it was found, though, I'd say, and the excuse me, the election was ultimately not legitimate, and say like 40, even 50, maybe more than that percent of people actually did not vote for whoever the leader of Hamas is to become the supreme leader or whatever of the Gaza Strip, then I would say that that would be a case that maybe they don't all deserve to be deported from Israel.
Well, I would
Just
just,
speaking-
I would just, if I was in this hypothetical, in the hypothetical that you delivered,
Yeah.
I would look at it as a political expedient means in order for me to rid myself of potentially damaging and problematic people within my country. I would utilize that to deport them. If they refuse to deport, then I would use military force in order to eliminate them. You were asking me, this is just cut and dry going by the hypothetical that you're given. My morality has nothing to do with this. This is looking at it more of a political expediency.
What would the difference be between that and no offense with the comparison right here, and a white ethno-statist went to deport every single dark person out of the U.S. because they are not of a constitutionalist or any kind of right-leaning mindset, generally speaking?
Well, a white ethno-state person would not even look at it as a constitutional thing. They would look at it solely as a racial thing. You're talking about people who are racial supremacists, not people that actually give two shits or squirts of piss about Western civilization.
They say they use the Western values justification to say why we need a white ethno-state, supposedly.
But they're calling for a race-based state, so they would actually segregate based on race. Is how they would determine it.
Would they get rid of the U.S. Constitution, for example, though?
I do not know anything about that, nor would I even pretend to think along those lines, because I believe that America is actually good because of the mix of people that we have, and it's not like, oh, diversity is our strength. No, it's different points of view that is actually our strength. It's diversity of opinions. Race has nothing to do with it. But if you're asking me to look
Sure.
at something based on nothing more than racial lines, then I will look at it as a simple
this is-
racial component, and I will segregate and eliminate based on that alone.
Well, this is why that I was trying to get to the explanation of beliefs, because if I was to like steel man white ethno-statist for a moment here, the underlying reason as to why they say that dark skinned people are bad and should be deported, whatever, no exception, is because generally they do not have the same beliefs that white people generally have, that being nationalism or whatever else
Nationalism
kind
has
of
nothing to do
moral
with,
or philosophical structure that they want to pull out. Like,
nationalism has
if
absolutely nothing to do with any type of ethnic statehood.
kind of does, because
No, it really
the
doesn't,
idea
because-
of valuing your country so much that you think that it is only deserving for white people, then is it? I would say that that's by definition nationalist.
But you actually see that going on right now in areas such as South Africa, where they're actually targeting white individuals and killing them and murdering them,
Right.
taking away land from white individuals based on
course,
nothing
I'm not
more
saying
than
that's
their
right.
skin, based on nothing more than the color of their skin.
And of course,
So-
I'm like fully against that. Just full context,
Well,
everybody.
no, I get that, and I'm not even going to accuse you of, because I think that would be stupid and that'd be in bad faith. The scenario you're posing is based on a white ethno-state, white nationalist style opinion. The Constitution has nothing to do with it. A race has everything to do in that situation. I personally think that
Well, maybe it's not
anything
the-
where you, yeah, it's slippery slope, and it's really
Maybe it's not the
It's one of the-
Constitution specifically, but they just go mentioning XYZ value. I cannot remember what specifically Richard Spencer, for example, was mentioning in his debate against Sargon, but he mentioned the underlying reason as to why that we need to set up a white ethno-state is because white people generally hold XYZ value as compared to dark-skinned people, so therefore deport all darkies.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. And someone clip that, please. My God, that one is going to be used to abuse you right there.
By the
Don't
way,
ever say
that anybody want to take that out of context? I was saying that quote in context of what alt
Too late,
writers.
brother.
I was saying that in context of what alt writers think. But
That's two so far, man. Oof. First, you're like the final the final countdown, and now you're like, oof, man, that is.
But just a
rough, son, that's rough.
full disclaimer here, everybody. Nobody believes in setting up white ethno-states. I mean, see, Sparky here, he wants to set up or he would like the Israeli government to set up a Jewish ethno-state, but no.
No, I actually believe that every country has a right to exist in their own
but
external.
we don't believe in white ethno-states or deporting all dark-skinned people, and we do not think that they are a whole bunch of I don't know, trash or whatever people like.
Retards.
Fucking love Flash gets. But anyway, enough of the virtue signaling, though. I do not know if I heard like quite frankly, a sufficient answer as to what is the differentiation between deporting all Palestinians, because they generally hold a belief against Israel, like say over 50%, let's just say, for example. How that's different from deporting all black people, let's say, for example, because they generally hold a belief against U.S.
But I never said it was different. I never even claimed it was.
Okay, I thought that was what you were trying to get at, but go on.
No, the question that you asked, as you said, as Prime Minister, I would sit there and look as anything that was actually into any type of opposition or danger of my power, removing power of me and the people who are considered to be rightfully in power and should remain in power because of the laws of my country. I would remove said power. I would remove said threat to power.
This is sounding like some very heavy-handed moral relativism right here.
You're talking about a group. You're talking about an entire region that has done nothing but use heavy-handed tactics in order to run it. So there's your context right there. You rule with an iron fist in the Middle East. That's how things are done. It is the cultural norm there.
Well, I guess I'll just make this final point and then move on to the next question. If I was to take my current values that I hold right now into Israel and become Israel PM, I would, and if there's like firm evidence to show or whatever, that basically not all Palestinian heritage people living within Israeli land, but actually believe in exterminating all Jews, well then I say don't deport every single one of them, just the violent ones, the ones that actually have that intent and whatnot.
Why wait? I'm talking about a group of people that has on multiple occasions voted in people whose number one goal was to destroy the Jewish race.
Well, maybe we can like go.
You don't negotiate with those people. You understand that? Allowing them to live.
Not for negotiating with Hamas.
Yes.
But the actual people that they claim rulership over. That's what I'm talking about here.
Deal. On multiple occasions, the Israeli government has offered something called the two-state solution, which has actually allowed for a state such as Palestine to exist every time it has been denied. The Jews have done nothing but reached out and tried to be quite even-handedly a lot of times.
With 99% no vote within people living in the Gaza Strip?
I'm not questioning the legitimacy of their votes or not. I don't care about that.
Okay.
I'm telling you that on multiple occasions, the Israeli state has actually came down with some such things as a two-state solution, and it has been turned down every time. They have basically said they want all of Israel or none of it at all. Guess what? They would get none of it. I would send them out, and I would send them out with the ability to live. If they refuse to leave, well, then it might get a little messy.
All right.
If you're going to vote for the destruction of a people, those people have no reason to even remotely negotiate.
All right.
And they have done nothing but tried to negotiate. When it comes down to it, the Israeli people allow for Christians and Muslims and Jews to live and cohabitate in harmony. The Palestinians do not want that.
You Zionist shill!
I'm just going with the public policies of Israel there.
But
and yes, I am a Zionist.
To sort of move along to the next question, if it hasn't been made clear already here, folks, obviously me and Sparky do not agree on everything here. We agree that, generally speaking, the Israeli government is justified in their retaliation thus far against Hamas. We just have differing beliefs in how that they should handle the situation if say one of us was Israeli PM. But sort of talk about the whole thing of the 1948 original founding of Israel? I got the year right, right?
1947.
1947? All right.
Yeah.
I thought that was like sometime a little after the actual ending of World War II. I at least knew that part. But 1947, the people like to make the argument that Israel actually
It
stole
might be 1948. I've got to look that up. Because someone in my chat is saying it was 1948. So I just want to be as accurate as I can be. And my chat, greatest chat, dude. Tony, you need to go to Twitch. Twitch has some of the best chats in the world. Let's see, founding of Israel. They're very. So 1948 was actually the creation of Israel. So I was off by a year. You were actually correct. Good job there.
Oops.
Yep. Hey, look, I could be wrong. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
But so to talk about the original founding of the state of Israel, the argument that's being made by the left and just general anti-Israel people, because hashtag not all leftists are against Israel. PSA 6 is an example of somebody who is pro-Israel, and he's center-left, y'all. But the general argument from the anti-Israel crowd is that the land was stolen, that Israel had no rightful claim to that given region, and so therefore the state of Israel, the country of Israel, is illegitimate, and we should, or the UN more specifically, should do something about it, completely dissolve that nation, and I don't know what the fuck that their exact stance is. Like, it could range from anything of let them get fed to the dogs, and by the dogs I'm meaning like the predatory people amongst the predatory governments in the Muslim world, or it could be that they have some flowery hippie kind of belief of what will happen afterward. But what is your belief on that? Obviously, I would think that it is in fact not stolen in your belief, but give us the full context as to why that people think that way and why you believe that it is not stolen.
So it's 3 times within modern history where people of Europe have actually determined that they were considering giving all lands back to the Jews. In 1917, following World War One, when they were dissolving the Ottoman Empire, there was discussion of actually allowing all European Jews to be sent down to there and given the land of Israel, the territory of Israel. This was through the Balfour Declaration. Thank you so much, Alamo, for throwing that out there for me.
So wait, let them voluntarily go down to that area, or to deport them?
Yes, they were going to they were going to encourage. So a lot of people in Europe didn't already look. The reason why there is such distaste for Jewish people throughout most of Western civilization is because, well, they were the bankers. Additionally, in Christianity, just like in Islam today,
The bankers fund the wars.
Sure, honk honk. When it comes down to it, originally in Christianity, they considered it wrong to charge interest on loans. So Jews decided to take up banking because you wouldn't find anyone who wanted to be a bank and Christian because they couldn't make any money off it. What would be the point? The Jews being a relative minority in almost every place they've lived, following the fall of the Kingdom of Israel, they would always get in where they could fit in, and they also had to become quite learned on the laws and stuff, and that's why you see them traditionally be lawyers and stuff. Talmudic Jews are very big on law. There's a lot of semantic things. There's a reason why they have to be able to quote a lot of the Talmud. It's an oral tradition thing. It's all about accuracy and whatnot. So Jews were bankers and lawyers and such in Europe. Well, most people hate bankers. Most people hate lawyers. Most people hate politicians. So there was this huge movement against Jews throughout the history of Europe. You see this actually existing. So when the Ottoman Empire was finally broken apart following World War One, they offered.
Yeah,
Well, it didn't come to pass.
to quote Cavernacle, the Nazis did not invent anti-Semitism, or whatever his
Yeah,
British fuck accent goes. But go
yeah.
on.
But like even before then, Jews were not allowed to own lands. They became brokers. And how do brokers make money? Brokers skim money off the
God.
top. They charge service fees and stuff, and so Jews became widely hated throughout Europe, and it's because Europeans felt like they were being screwed. Well, it's because Christianity was so hardcore on not screwing other Christians that it limited business opportunities. Jews filled the need. They filled a need is what happened.
Hmm.
When they dissolved the Ottoman Empire, there was talk of offering them land, and well, it never came to fruition. The British actually took over the area. They later called Palestine, and they held it until following World War II. The second time it was actually offered to deport the Jews into the area of Israel was actually Adolf Hitler. Um, Believe it or not, Hitler did not initially want to destroy the Jews. They just wanted to relocate them. It was actually one of the things he suggested
You're a
was that
Holocaust
we set up.
denier, AircraftSparky.
Oh no, the Holocaust absolutely happened. But
I'm bullshitting, of course.
yes, but before he actually implemented the FS, when he started that during the loss of World War II, it was actually talked about when they was started to round them up in the gulags. He was actually promising to actually allow them to move down to Israel. Of course, we know that didn't happen. He ended up putting them in prison camps and forced labor camps, and performed a lot of horrible experiments on them, starved people, and ultimately killed multiple Jews and Poles and Gypsies. That is what the Holocaust is. A lot of people think it was just Jews. No, it was not just Jews. It was Gypsies. It was Poles. It was Russians. There was all kinds of people that were affected by the
Of
Holocaust.
course.
But the Jews were initially pointed out as a group of people, and many Europeans considered to be quote unquote undesirable. Following the fall of the Nazbols in 1944, 45ish, you actually see the discovery of these forced labor camps. No one knew about Auschwitz. No one knew about these horrible forced labor camps where they were killing Jews indiscriminately. A lot of people said that we went to World War II because of the Holocaust. No,
Oh, of
not at
course
all.
not.
But
Yeah, I didn't really think so. FDR just had some arbitrary hate boner against the Nazis, and he wanted the Japanese. Well, I don't know if this is the right wording, but nonetheless, supposedly he wanted the Japanese to attack in order to justify, going against not only just the Japanese, but also the Nazis, who were like more or less in
well, he
allyship
really
with
wanted to help.
Japan.
He really wanted to help Europe. Okay, so during the time of the Battle of the Atlantic and whatnot, we actually had U.S. Army Air Corps personnel over there flying with the British Air Force, bombing Germany before we actually officially entered the war.
Hmm.
What actually encouraged a Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was when we actually did one of the greatest faux pas in history, um, and something that actually justifies war. We started a sanction on oil to Japan. So some would say that we actually encouraged Japanese to fight. There is some legitimacy to that, but Japan actually went and initiated the attack, which actually gave the green light to FDR for him to engage in the European campaign, in which Americans have wanted absolutely nothing to do with.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. Following following the destruction of the Nazi Party and the humiliation of Germany, Part Two, um, they decided to offer to the Jewish people to prevent any type of future issues like this from ever occurring to them again. The Allies decided to offer land to the Jewish people, and they graciously accepted. And it took about 2 years to move everyone there, get them stable. The British Army actually protected them, and as soon as they left, the Arabs attacked.
Now, were the Palestinians like, or we'll just say Arabs as a catch-all? They were, of course, already there, and they felt like that not just Israel, but the Europeans were stealing that land for the Jewish people in order to create the Israeli state.
Well, the land was not stolen because the land was never theirs. Arabs will tell you it was their land, but they had not held control over it since the fall of the Ottoman Empire.
It was
The
originally British
controlled it.
Empire territory, right?
Well, the British held it following World War One.
Okay.
So
So the British Empire, they were originally want to bring the Israelis down there to create their own nation, but there's this other group of people, the what would eventually be Palestinians, and I take it that they originally thought that maybe you guys can come up with a two-state solution, but is the Palestinians denied it, and so that's when that heated it really got heated with them ever since. Am I understanding that correctly?
well, so initially, in the '60s, I believe, is when they actually offered the opportunity for a two-state solution. Was the first time. Later, it was offered in the '90s. Yasser Arafat was actually getting very close to agreeing to it with the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and of course he died. So those chances of talks have all but dissolved, and the PLA, the Palestinian Liberation Authority, who is basically an offshoot of Hamas.
Yasu who? What was the guy's name?
Yasser Arafat.
Yasser Arafat. Was he like somebody of Palestinian heritage that was
Yeah,
leading
he
the
was.
Palestinian people at the time? He was
Yeah.
all like, let's come up with a two-state solution. Then he died, and some more, tyrannical might not be the exact word, but some more psychotic
Well,
individuals came in and took control.
Yasser Arafat was actually quite amenable. He was pretty much working
Amicable?
toward peace. Yeah, that word.
But his inheritors, they were a whole lot more violent than he was.
Yeah.
A whole lot more intolerant, to where that they wanted nothing to do with Israelis. They thought that they should even be maybe even exterminated, etc., etc.
Yeah. Yeah, amicable. Yeah, I'm terrible with words sometimes, and I apologize for trying to use a $5 word when a $3 probably could have worked better.
We
But
forgive
yeah,
you this time, Sparky.
So yes, this has happened. Look, as long as Israel exists, this will probably continue to happen until Israel finally finishes the job. I don't know what that looks like. That is up to them. Yet again.
So, in between the time of the very first two-state solution proposal under Yasser Arafat and the founding of, well, quasi-founding of Israel, Israel was still even barely a country at that time, right? And they were, the Israelis.
Israel has been a country since 1948, and because of the way they have defended themselves, I don't think there's any way that you can deny it. I don't think anyone can deny it, to be honest, because every time it has been attempted to make them illegitimate and make them not exist, they tend to defeat everyone who's attacked them.
Okay, the
So,
reason why I worded it that way, though.
Claim it is not legitimate would be to say that, oh well, they were handed everything. They were handed the land initially. They were.
The reason.
Let's not even pussyfoot around that. The British gave them that land. However, they defended it. So, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, the premise was in order to hold land, one must defend land. They have defended land on multiple occasions. In fact, they have taken land.
The reason
And
why
they-
I worded it that way, though, is because there's like this one meme that was shared around quite recently, showing like 4 different pictures of the evolution of the state of Israel. That it was like non-existent, then it was like very, very tiny, hardly any land controlled by the Israelis, and it got slightly bigger in the 60s, and now it's become what it exactly is right now.
If you get your history from memes,
No, I was just trying to ask, well, okay. Sure, whatever. Fumble the ball,
Yeah.
whatever. But, what am I trying to say here? But in between the time of the original founding of the country of Israel and the 60s, during the first proposal of a two-state solution, the Palestinians and Israelis, they were living with each other, and
They still live with each other today. See,
well,
that's
yeah, but
a lot of people try to pretend that they're completely segregated. They're not. There's actually tons of Palestinians that actually live within the quote unquote Israeli borders, and others that live with, and there's actual Israelis that live within the quote unquote Palestinian borders.
but how agitated were those living conditions between the two groups during that time, during the 40s to the 60s?
The accounts that I have read, there's a mixed bag. It really depends on who you're reading from. So
Okay.
when you look at history, the way you can determine what actually happened is you actually read like correspondences and stuff like that, accounts, diaries and stuff of different individuals, and you actually see it through their eyes, through their point of view, through their writings. To actually know 100% if something happened, sometimes you can't actually 100% confirm that, but you can get a lot of sense of the actual feeling of what people thought. And one of the biggest times that you can look at throughout history is when the Moors were actually living in Spain.
But there wasn't as much of a "you stole our land" sort of rhetoric that was going on in the time frame
That
of the
existed
40s
then.
through the
No,
60s.
that existed then.
What?
That existed then.
I'm sure it did, but it did
I
not
mean,
exist as much. It wasn't believed as much as it is today.
no, it existed then.
Well, then
It
how
really did. But a lot of time you'll see that that the people who would say that kind of stuff are still licking their wounds from the ass kicking they got previously.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking this sort of is because I thought that the two-state solution proposal came a whole lot earlier than the 60s or whenever it is that Yasser
Well,
Arafat was
there was
leader
no
of
there
the
was
Palestinian people.
no there was propositions of that early in the 50s. This has been a constant thing that has come up a multitude of times. Israel has just now recently decided to say fuck it, and they're not messing with it anymore. I don't blame them.
Early 50s, was that when Yasser Arafat was leader?
No, no.
No.
Yasser Arafat was there during the 80s and 90s.
Ah, okay. Never mind then.
Yeah.
But
so-
in the early 50s, they voted by a majority. Was it that the Palestinians the people that lived
No, the Palestinians did not vote on it. The people who were deemed as their leadership is the ones who voted on it.
the leadership just
So just like we have representatives vote for us in the House of Congress, House of Representatives, and in the Senate,
but the leadership just
the
autocratically
leader-
said no
Yes.
two-state
Yes.
solution.
Don't you know how the Middle East works? I mean, there is no such thing.
No, I'm just
Israel is the closest thing to a democracy that exists in the Middle East.
no. I'm sure that is like the most likely thing that actually happened. I was just wanting to clarify because earlier we were talking about elections of who should be the leaders of the Gaza Strip by the people of the Gaza Strip, and I was just wanting to see of how air quotes democratically it was held, because really questionable as to how democrat all the proceedings of within the Gaza Strip are actually done.
Yeah, Israel is a parliamentary democracy. They are very close to the British.
Well, I was
form
referring to the
of
Gaza
government.
Strip specifically, but go
The
on.
Gaza Strip is ran through authoritarian purposes. They hold elections just like Assad holds elections, just like the Omanis hold elections. Sure, they happen. Do you trust them? I don't. It doesn't matter. They allow that authority to exist, so it is what it is.
They allow that authority, as in the people living
let's
within.
make no doubt about it. Let's make no doubt about it. Every time a dictatorship exists, the people actually allow it to happen. It is through their own cowardice that dictatorships exist. If they actually rose up, there's way more of them than there are actual dictators. It is very easy. Yes, there will be a pile of bodies, but with enough bodies, you could take over that dictatorship. I'm just saying.
Okay.
If you'd like proof of that, I reference you to 1776.
No, I'm not doubting it. I was just, as in they essentially do not put up any sort of resistance. No
they don't.
revolution of any kind or whatever.
No, they don't, and that's their problem, not mine.
Probably the closest thing that comes to nowadays is the protests that going on in Cuba right now, or that
Well, I
have gone on
mean,
very
to
recently.
be quite fair, if the Cubans really wanted to depose the Castros, uh, they could, um, but they don't have the fortitude to do it.
They probably also don't have as much of the resources as the colonialists did at the colonists, excuse me, did at the time of the 1770s.
Mm, I don't know. I can't speak on that.
I guess it would be a point worthy of research, but I highly doubt that there is high enough gun ownership per capita that goes on in Cuba.
Most dangerous weapon in the world is a human. Hate to break it to you. I mean, guns are the great equalizer, but there's a point where ammunition runs out. It's a numbers game, lads. When it comes down to it, guns are the great equalizer. Do not get that wrong. But guns just make killing easier. Most people don't have the stomach to kill without one. Of course, most people don't even have the stomach to stand up with one. So when it comes down to it, it's a gut check.
All right. Question that just came up in the live chat. Actually, first I'm going to read this. Alex Mig in the live chat said, just saw the thumbnail. This is going to be a spicy one no matter how you look at it. Indeed, Israel is like one of those hot button issues, even more so than economics debates of capitalism versus socialism. Let's be real here, people. But Ivan's son in the live chat asks, did you forget about the Balfour Declaration? What does the Bible say concerning this?
I did mention the Balfour Declarations just briefly, and that's following the breaking up of the Ottoman Empire. And so that's when I mentioned that with the Bible, what Bible says that the world will end, that you will actually see revelations when the kingdom of Israel happens again. Is modern day Israel the new kingdom of Israel? I do not know, nor will I sit there and suggest one way or the other. Jeremiah 3:8 says, the Lord says, I gave a fatherless Israel,
a faithless Israel,
faithless, and sent her away because of her adulteries.
I do not know why exactly that is being mentioned. Maybe you know a little bit more context.
I'd have to look that one up. Jeremiah. Anyway, continue on, man.
There's nothing much going on in the live chat here, actually. I thought that my live chat would have been on fire with pro-Israel and anti-Israel people debating in it, and maybe even people getting mad at me and so forth, but I don't know. I'm going to have to see of what the aftermath of this live stream looks like if people go back and watching this, if they'll even bother. I mean, I hope so, because the issue of Israel has been like an issue that has been talked about very passionately in my Discord server, and that's the biggest reason why I'm doing these live stream interviews, is because I want to try and maybe settle some, emphasis on some, of the rhetoric being thrown around in my Discord server.
Okay, so I'll tell you this. First of all, I would say that I'm not one to actually settle any of this, because all I will do is inflame because my apathy towards other countries and how they run.
To progress things slightly, maybe.
Yeah.
But go on.
Looking up Jeremiah 3, I'll start at 3:7, Messianic Jewish Bible. I said that after she has done all these things, she would return to me, but she hasn't returned. Meanwhile, her unfaithful sister, Yehuda, has been watching. I saw that even through backsliding, Israel had committed adultery, so that I had sent her away and given her a divorce document. Unfaithful Yehuda and her sister was not moved to fear. Instead, she too went and prostituted herself. And this is when they talk about Israel, it's not Israel. Talk about Israel, it's not talking about the actual kingdom. It's actually talking about an individual, a person. Chapter 9, verse 9. To ease with Israel prostituted herself, defiled the land. Oh no, I was wrong. It is actually talking about the country. And she committed adultery with stones and with logs. Yet, in spite of all this, her unfaithful sister Yehuda had not returned to me wholeheartedly, and she only makes a pretense of it, said Adonai. Adonai is another word for God. Then Adonai said unto me, backsliding Israel has proven herself more righteous than unfaithful
Adonai,
Yehuda.
that's a first for me.
Go and proclaim these words towards the north. Return, backsliding Israel, said Adonai, and I will not frown on you, for I am merciful. I will not bear a grudge forever. Only acknowledge your guilt, that you have crimes committed against Adonai your God, and you were promiscuous with strangers under every green tree, and you had not have paid attention to my voice. Return, backsliding children, says Adonai, for I am your master. I will take you from a city, from a family, and bring you to Zion, where I will give you shepherds
Zion?
after my own heart. No, to Zion.
Different from Zion?
Yeah, a little
Okay.
bit different than Zion. After my own hearts, and they will feed you with acknowledgement and understanding. So basically, it's saying that Israel has turned its back on God, but God would accept them back if they would just allow the shepherds of God, the prophets of God, to actually raise the children back in the right ways of God. Yada yada yada.
Stop demanding for kings, Hebrews.
So, is what it is. Look, Ivan, man, going through the Bible. If you'd like to, man, join my Discord, and you could drop all this stuff in there. I'm not going to do all this on stream because, well, it doesn't really push the conversation forward all that well, and maybe not everyone wants to hear me reading from a Bible they don't fully understand, and I'm still learning, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
I do a lot of research.
Full
I do a lot of
context.
research on a lot of that.
Fuller context to everybody who might just be listening. He's talking to Ivan's son in my live chat. Is what AircraftSparky is doing.
So please feel free to join my Discord, man, and you can find me. You can find me through DarkCon's Discord as well, and I'll be glad to talk with you about that. But live on stream, it's kind of that's something I would have to be able to research on to be able to give you a good reaction, a proper reaction.
I guess on that note, I will go ahead and copy and see if I can like send the link, Discord link invite. All right. It's right there, Ivan's son, a 24-hour link for you to go ahead and join my Discord server if you really want to. That is, if you have Discord. Otherwise, okay, this might still be up in the air. But anyway, so the one last thing on the Israel question. It's like a kind of a small one. It doesn't have to be like really long. But what would you suggest reading as far as the origins of the state of Israel goes, and the fuller story and context around 1948, and arguing as to how that the state of Israel is legitimate and that the UN should not come in and dissolve the state of Israel? Like, what books would you suggest on that?
Well,
or sources in general?
Well, books. I mean, to be honest, if you looked at it, it was the UN that actually helped with the establishment of Israel. I can't.
Well, I'm
I
sure,
cannot
but
see anywhere that the UN would actually come in and try to delegitimize it. But when it comes down to it, you.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there's like
standard.
some Western world liberals and leftists that want to take that methodology.
Well, look, it doesn't matter. Look, the history is
Doesn't matter to us, but
standard.
they'll still make the attempt because it still matters to them.
It doesn't matter because whatever they read, they're not going to agree to it, and so I would just tell you pick up just look it up in Wikipedia. It's for the most part pretty accurate. There's a couple discrepancies there, but if you look at the actual sources that they put in Wikipedia, that'll help point you towards directions to find the actual truth. One thing I do like about Wikipedia is there's actually a way to look at the sources, so you can determine for yourself if you fully believe it. Because let's be honest, Wikipedia
You mean all the links down at the bottom?
Yeah.
All right. All right.
So, but it's pretty much been out there for a while, man. It's not hard to find.
All right.
You can Google that shit.
So, on that note, then, how long we've been streaming? On my end, it's like been 1 hour and 44 minutes. No Christian should support earthly Israel. We wait for the heavenly kingdom, the one the Lord Jesus will create when he returns. Well, I certainly don't support Hamas ransacking Israel. So as it stands right now, that's how that I send my verbal support to Israel. At least Ivan's son, me personally. I want them to be able to defend themselves, and of course that'll by default include them existing. So, but anyway. One of the other subjects that was sort of talked about in the last live stream that I had Sparky on my channel, it was briefly touched upon but wasn't really talked about in full, and of course me and Sparky, we talked about it a little bit off air after I pressed the end broadcast button, was theology. The differences between Messianic Jewish theology and Christian theology, and so Sparky
there really
here.
isn't much difference between Christian theology and Messianic Judaism. For the most
You
part,
said that there isn't much difference?
No, there really isn't much difference because look, the biggest difference is the fact that Messianic Jews actually still follow the Talmud, which is essentially the Old Testament.
Well, that's where the difference is.
Yeah,
is that
that's really the only big difference is the fact that because they look, we realize that Jesus did not take away from the laws of God; he just added to them.
That's where the theological difference is that I guess Messianic Jews, they believe that bacon is still a sin, but Christians, they don't.
Well, because it's through the acceptance of Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior is where they can ascend. That's through John 3:16.
Is where that they can what?
It doesn't. John 3:16.
No. I heard John 3:16.
God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever shall believe in him.
So it's because of that they can, or what?
It is through the belief that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior, is the Messiah, is what actually saves you and allows you to go to heaven. It has nothing to do with what sect of Christianity or religion that you're in.
But I thought for a second there that I heard you say it is through that you can sin. I must have misheard you, right?
No, you can sin. Everyone can sin. In fact, everyone will.
Well, they're able to, but that doesn't mean that they should or should not.
No. It's not saying that you should or should not. What it is saying is we understand that you will sin. Everyone will sin, even after being saved. You will still sin. But it is through the forgiveness of Jesus Christ that you are saved and therefore redeemed. He is the Messiah. All praise be to Jesus. And that is where that comes from. Messianic Judaism is essentially Christianity, but they still follow the laws of the Torah. I eat kosher. I don't eat pig. I don't eat swine.
No shellfish. No mixing of fabrics. No shaving if you're a religious leader.
And I apologize. Good job, Alamo. So I'm new to Messianic Judaism. It is Torah that is the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, not the Talmud. Good job. I've got, dude, telling you, best chat in Twitch right here.
Okay, I did not know if you were like referring to something completely different, because I always understood that the Torah was the
the Torah is the Old Testament. The Talmud is actually the story of the Jewish religion and blah blah blah. It's where all of your laws come through, but we still try to follow the Talmudic law. We actually do. We eat. I eat kosher. I don't eat shellfish. I don't eat pork, because it's unclean. Just because Jesus came, that did not rescind the laws of God.
But your belief is exactly that it is a sin, so therefore people should avoid it?
Yes.
Stop eating shellfish and pig, and stop wearing cross fabrics?
Yeah, well, I challenge you to dress in single types of clothing, like just cotton or just silk or anything like that. That's damn hard. You're going to have blended fabrics. It's almost something that is damn near impossible to do these days.
Yeah, and in the case of wintertime, that would mean that you
We
would
do our best.
have to
Yeah.
wear nothing but wool, essentially. But nowadays,
that's
people
basically
have
hell.
like these insulated coats with 3 different types of fabric incorporated into them.
Yeah. So when it comes down to it, I do my best to follow these laws, and it's just a way to try to be better. Okay. Um, eating things like pork and shellfish. I mean, basically, you're eating the garbage disposals of the world. I mean, if you'd like to get no sicker, all you have to do is eat one raw oyster and enjoy the salmonella. Um, just saying. When you're eating filter feeders, when you're eating the cockroaches of the sea, when you're eating things like catfish,
But I
things that
suppose if
reside
you
on
were to like,
garbage.
if you were to eat a raw, cage-free chicken or cattle, you're not gonna experience the same results.
Well, I mean, if you eat raw chicken, yeah, fuck up and find out. But you're looking at like the reasons why things like pig, like swine, is considered to be unclean is because they don't sweat. They really don't have a way to get rid of the impurities in their body.
Really? Well, then I guess the term "sweating like a pig" doesn't really apply, right?
No, in fact, sweating like a pig is bleeding. So that's why pigs actually wallow in mud. It's to cool themselves down because they cannot sweat.
Oh, so if they get too hot, they'll rupture at
Die.
the skin and bleed.
Yes.
Well, the more you know.
So it's actually kind of funny. I laugh at things like Red Lobster being so popular with the African American people because guess what? Slaves were fed primarily when on the coast.
Lobster.
Lobster. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually very just recently heard that bit of context as to how that shellfish came about is because the slaves at the time had nothing else, and suddenly the tables had turned. Shellfish became a little bit more of a delicacy, particularly lobster.
Well, I mean, things like crab and lobster and shrimp and clams and mussels and stuff. I mean, not even 200 years ago, your average Christian wouldn't eat. The reason why it's become more mainstream as well because of availability of food versus the amount of people that exist. I won't say that you're going to hell for eating of these things. It's just something that is a personal choice that I have made myself to try my best to follow the rules. Um, like right now, I am breaking a rule. Right now, we're breaking a rule.
You're talking
Exact-
about how you're wearing like polyester
Well,
with
Not
silk.
even that. Not even that. It is after dark. It is after dark, and I am not actually following. I'm not keeping the Shabbat holy.
Oh, you're talking about the Sabbath?
Yeah.
Okay. Very quickly to Ivan's son in the chat, he says, "The law saved no one, Colossians 2:16. It's not what you do or have done, it's what he has done for you. And study the letters of Paul, he explains all of this." Please, explain yourself fully as to what exactly you're trying to say, Ivan's
Basically,
son.
he says that he is saying no one is saved through the law. You're saved through the sacrifice of God, of Jesus. Jesus being sacrificed on the cross. He died for your sins. That's what he's
Right,
talking
that-
about. I get exactly what he's talking about. What I am talking about is the fact that Jesus did not rescind the law of God. Jesus cannot rescind the law of God. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is not God.
Yeah, I
So
cannot.
there is a difference of opinion there. There's arguments within the theological community about that. I am not a theological scholar by any means, but I will tell you this: if my pops told me something and he said this is the law and I disobeyed it, guess what happened? So Jesus actually followed all those laws. He kept the Sabbath holy. He ate only approved foods. He ate kosher. He followed Talmudic law.
He stopped a stoning of an adulterer from, or was it a blasphemer? I think it was a blasphemer. He stopped the stoning of a blasphemer from happening.
Yeah, and it
So he was like,
doesn't say that they must be killed. They shall. So it's one of those things. So when it comes down to language, it's about accuracy. Okay.
Well,
It
then, by
should
that
happen,
logic, thou shalt
shall-
not kill. That's not a
no,
proposal
thou
that you
shalt not
should not
murder.
kill. Well,
Thou shalt not murder. Is
thou
the
shalt not
actual-
murder. In that case, God, by that very same logic, God should have used the word must instead of shall for his command right there.
So it's a semantics game, is what it is. But Jesus is quoted as saying things like, "I am the tyrant." Okay, when it comes down to it, Jesus was very hardcore on the law. In fact, he destroyed an entire church based
Right.
on Talmudic law. So Jesus followed the law. He followed the letter of the law. Maybe not always the what
But the reason as to why that I'm bringing this up, I mean, the whole "I am a tyrant" or whatever exactly. I mean, I can understand the context of that being a metaphor, but the idea of a command, I don't see as hardly
how can
that being
Jesus
metaphorical.
how can Jesus overrule a commandment? Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus was not God. Jesus did not destroy the commandments. Jesus upheld the commandments and actually added.
Not technically overrule a commandment or overrule the law. That's not what I'm trying to get out. But fulfill it so as to it does, or
Jesus fulfilled
good
one
portions
thing,
of
and
it
that
does
was-
not apply as far
Jesus
as obeying
fulfilled
it
one
goes.
thing, that was the messianic the messianic prophecies. That's all he did. That is what he fulfilled.
But
He
getting back to
upheld-
the whole,
He upheld the laws. He fulfilled the messianic prophecy.
but the point that I was trying to make, getting back to the shall versus must, I'm just saying that I don't see what is the big old semantics debate about that. I'm just saying that by the
You
same
haven't-
logic that the fact that they say they use the word shall with
Shall
stoning.
instead of will.
May I,
shall
finish
instead
my
of
point
will
here?
is the difference. That's the difference, though.
What?
What does shall mean? What does will mean? That's your difference. Shall means should. Will means it happens. Okay, so
Okay, well then by that admission, basically the law said you should, not just you shall, but you should stone adulterers and blasphemers.
that doesn't
That it
mean
was
you-
commanded to them to do such, and but
but you
Jesus
should,
was
it does
coming
not mean
in,
you
and
will.
Jesus was coming in and saying you actually should not do this. I'm here to fulfill the law, so you don't have to do that bull crap anymore.
Jesus came to fulfill the messianic prophecy. So he already knew. He knew what was going to happen in the end. Why condemn this person to death when he can forgive him? He can turn the other cheek. And turning the other cheek wasn't a bitch-made move either. It was offer the other cheek in order to almost dare that person, but to still forgive instead of complete retaliation.
So you would not call it technically a breaking of the law for him to stop other people from stoning a blasphemer?
No, because he can actually teach that person. He can reform that person. Jesus believed in reform. Initially, when you look at the commandments, when you look at the enforcement of the law, they didn't allow for much redemption back then. I actually look at it as almost the evolution of man. If you look at a child, everything is kind of black and white. As you become more of a teenager or an adolescent, you start to learn such things as nuance. As an adult, once you become a parent, you are much less strict. In fact, you still hold your standards, but you're not necessarily going to beat your child to death because they did something that pissed you off, right? So you become a little bit more forgiving and more worried about reform to try to teach things to be better. Jesus was that messianic prophecy come true. He was a son of God. God's viewpoint was changed over to oh, you're going to do as I say, exactly how I say, or I will smite you down, to let's reform. Let's try to improve things, not do it through fear, but do it through more of
In other words, get rid of executions for sins.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's more of an idea of reform than it is anything else.
So,
You can still uphold the law and not have the severe consequences of said law.
what? Okay. I don't know if you're like trying to get down to the differentiation, the nuanced difference between these two things that I'm about to mention, but you say according to Messianic Jewish faith, and by extension of course Judaist faith, like Ben Shapiro, for example, that you should not you should refrain from eating bacon. But what's to say that by that logic that we should like continue with the old covenant law and go ahead and just execute our sinners, like blasphemers and adulterers more
If
specifically?
that's the world you want to live in, man, that's not
No,
really
it's
what
not the
I'm
world
looking
I
at.
want to live in. But the
But
reason why,
even Ben Shapiro would not even advocate for the stoning of a sinner.
right, I'm
Okay,
sure that he
he's
would not,
he's
but
an
that's kind of an
Orthodox Jew.
ironic thing with Judaists, in my opinion. I
No,
wish I could like.
no, it's not an ironic thing at all because
I mean, they
so
believe that Jesus was not a savior that actually fulfilled the
they
law, so that
they do not
executions don't have
believe
to happen anymore.
they don't believe that, but in the modern context, I mean, you can look at all kinds of things that the Orthodox Jewish religion believes that actually practices versus their difference in belief. Okay, so when it comes down to it, in Judaism, you have to follow the laws of the country where you live.
So
So
the laws of the country overrules the law of the Mosaic covenant.
they don't overrule, but you have to live in the society that you live in. You have to follow the laws. Even Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar what is his." So it is just part of it. It's part of that
So,
thing where the Jews may, where a messianic,
question
where a an Orthodox Jew may want to kill someone because they
for
blaspheme.
blasphemy.
Okay, the laws of the country where they live does not allow that, and they must
So
reside in that society.
you're saying if, say, for example, Ben Shapiro lived in Israel and Israel did not have, I'm going to assume that they have laws against this, but if they did not have any laws against doing the sin executions of the old Mosaic law, that Ben Shapiro would therefore be mandated to execute blasphemers and adulterers?
Well, I mean, if that was the law of the land and following the letter of Talmudic law, yes, they would. But that's not how Israel is ran, so it's different.
Okay, so I guess
Nuance.
a further question, actually. The leaders of Israel specifically, are they wrong for instituting laws against executing people for their sins?
You've got to think about you've got to think about the modern context of the world. You have to live in this world. So,
I
will
mean,
I say they're wrong? No, I'm not going to say they're wrong or right because it's not my that's putting myself in a position of God. I believe there's more learned people who would argue that
does
along the lines
God's command actually care about moral relativism?
of God understands the world that we live in and will judge us based on that. Of course, I would also argue that when it comes down to it, it is through faith that you're saved. It is through belief in Jesus Christ as a Messiah that actually gets you to heaven, not the strict adherence to Talmudic law. If you look at things
So,
like Judaism and Islam, they are orthopraxic type religions, meaning that you have to actually follow in practice that religion as best you can in order to be a good Jew or Muslim.
so
In
I know that
Christianity, you're an orthodoxic religion, which means through faith.
So I know that this is not the word that you're using, relativism. But in what verse, what verse of the Bible does it say that you are to have a moral relativism or whatever with your religion, to as applies to
I'm
the time
not
that you live in?
I'm
Time.
not that well learned on the subject, so I'm not going to steer that. I'm not going to answer that because I don't know the answer fully.
Okay, well then,
It's just
in that
I
case,
don't want to give a wrong answer. I don't want to give a wrong answer. I've already given a couple that was a little wrong and got corrected by my wonderful chat.
well,
But
in
that's
that case,
not my place. I'm not gonna try. I try not to do apostate as you know.
In that case, then I don't see this moral relativism as when it comes to the Bible and what God commands us to be holding that much weight. Honestly,
Well, I mean, if you want to follow exactly what the word says in the Bible, I mean, then well, I guess mixing fabrics and
well, I'm not
following the law.
agreeing that
You
mixing
know,
fabrics is a sin. I've never really agreed that mixing fabrics is a sin.
but it's just it's a matter of.
I mean, of course, I would have to go like further study into it, look up the numerous verses of where that Paul, Jesus, and all the rest of them go talking about the old covenant law and how that you're not as much obligated to obey that, or you're not obligated to obey it as compared to the modern new covenant that Jesus has given us.
There really was no new covenant. See, that's Jesus fulfilled the prophecy. It's not a new covenant. The last covenant that God gave was with Noah.
Maybe new covenant is not the proper wording, but that's just a layman's term that I heard thrown around to basically explain of what the current command is of Jesus, and that the current commands of Jesus, not including mixing fabrics and no eating bacon.
Well, so here's the deal. Are the Ten Commandments still relevant today?
Not technically, but a whole lot of what Jesus said.
Ooh, that is spicy. That is spicy.
Like, as
See,
far as, say, the Sabbath, for example, I don't believe it to be like a full outright sin that, hey, if you do not refrain from doing absolutely anything on this given day, you are sinning and you are possibly, or more likely, or whatever appropriate term, to go to hell.
It basically says that on the Shabbat, you are not supposed to work. Now, that is what is actually determined to be work is pretty vague, right?
But if I may just fully explain before that we get away from this too far, not technically, I mean, especially when it comes to the Sabbath, but Jesus has made plenty of commands within the New Testament, and Paul helping emphasize those as well, that sort of were given by the Ten Commandments as well. But the Ten Commandments, as they were written at the time, applied mostly, if not exclusively, to the Old Covenant. That's my belief.
So Jesus never redefined anything within the Ten Commandments. In fact, he followed them verbatim.
Oh no, I never said that he redefined them.
He was accused once of working on the Sabbath or the Shabbat
because he healed somebody.
Yes, because he healed someone, and basically,
I think that's part of the justification that people, including me, like to give out as to how that the Sabbath is not as applicable now as it was back then.
So Jesus actually explained, and I don't fully remember the story, right? I don't want to, but he basically said this is not work. So there's been discussion in the Jewish community about what work actually entails, and that includes to operating electronic devices such as what we're on. And I don't keep the Shabbat holy. I go to synagogue. I actually attend service on the Sabbath. No Christian otherwise, except for maybe Seventh-day Advent, that actually does keep the Sabbath holy. The Sabbath is not on a Sunday. The reason why Sunday is considered to be the end of the work week is because it's actually from a pagan. Modern Christianity has a lot to do with paganism.
Yeah, Christmas and Easter much.
Yeah,
the Roman Catholics, they incorporated a whole lot of paganism into their beliefs and their practices that sort of transferred to nowadays.
So keeping Shabbat holy really has much more to do about the actual worship of God, taking time out away from your traditional work. Do I think that it's wrong to cook on the Shabbat? No, I don't. I think God understands your intentions. God is more forgiving than maybe he was back in the times when he was telling people to kill their son to prove their faith. But the last covenant that was actually given between God
or
and
kill their
anyone,
son if they're getting super unruly.
Yeah, the last covenant that was actually given by God was following the flooding of the earth, which that was actually given in the sign of the rainbow, which has since been co-opted by the LGBT plus community as an affront to God. And yeah, that's it's bad times.
Mhm.
So yeah, when I
By
see
the
when I
way,
if I was to stone every blasphemer, I would have to stone anyone who flew the LGB flag. Just saying.
Oh
Because
god.
the LGBT flag is a blasphemy.
No, I understand. You fully explained to me the context as to how that it is a blasphemy. But I guess to sort of, by the way, I'm liking the passionate and witty discussion here about theology. I mean, you notice of how kind of slow I was at the very beginning of this live stream, and I got a little bit more warmed up to where I am right now. I think I like this. Like this a lot.
Well, I mean, you only made a couple of faux pas. You were talking about the FS. The final countdown, and then I can't remember the other one you did. But man, when I go through this and clip this, you were fucked. No, you're good, man.
Make a YouTube poop of DarkCon. Oh man, I miss those of S-Mans. Just saying. The YouTube
yeah.
poops used to do. But I guess to address a little bit of the chat here, as I've been kind of putting it off for a little bit now. And hello again, Night Shift, and hello, Sent1000. Thank you all for joining the chat. Are you SDA? What is? Do you know what SDA is?
I have no clue what that is.
Ivan's son, if you're still in the live chat, tell us what SDA is. It's kind of weird. My YouTube browser for the live stream itself is showing one concurrent viewer, whereas the browser
Seventh-day Advent, I bet is what he meant.
Duh.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not Seventh-day Advent. I'm a Messianic Jew.
All right.
A little different.
What is the technical difference between a Seventh-day Adventist and Messianic Jew? Because as a layman, I will just assume that they are like identical, actually.
No, they're well. It's so when we pray towards Jerusalem. I actually face Jerusalem when I pray. Little things like that.
Which way is southeast?
Southeast? No, it's not southeast. Actually, where I am, it would almost be directly east from where I am. Where you are,
U.S. is like
east as well.
Still like a further north and closer to the North Pole than Israel. So I think there would have to be a little bit more southern pointage.
East, southeast, maybe at most, but general direction is fine.
All right. Galatians 3:10. I'm gonna have to definitely look up all the different verses that you are quoting right here, Ivan's son, sometime after the live stream. And thank you for citing a lot of them. I sense this needs a much deeper study, but good night, reread Paul. He does explain this. Yeah, you're right. It does need a deeper study. I need to get into that more myself. Excuse me.
And I will tell people, look, my beliefs are my own. What I believe is right is not necessarily 100% correct. I firmly believe that all people of the Christian faith will still make it to heaven. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh my God, these people can't do it. Oh, those evil Methodists. No, I think that's stupid. Although I will say that probably the Lutheran and the Episcopal and probably the Methodists probably are going to go to hell because of their acceptance of things, certain deals. But that's more about the individual, not the group, right? Considering that the individual leaders of these individual sects have decided to allow for the addition of LGBT people into their clergy, and they accept marriage and stuff like that of those people. I think that is wrong. I think that is actually blasphemy, and it is against the actual word of God. Well, they will pay for that. Not necessarily the members, mind you, but the people who decided to go against the word of God.
Okay.
My opinion.
Yep, totally your opinion. I'm not going to moral fag you over it.
You're like, oh, don't say that word, man. But no,
sorry.
No.
Yeah, have I gotten you taken down off of Twitch yet?
Oh no! I'm not worried about being taken off of Twitch for that. I've done much worse than that, but no, it's just I
But
just don't
you
think
get the
that's a good
term
word.
of
Yeah,
MFG.
yeah. I just look at it. I just look at it like this. There's no reason to slur anyone. I just look at it as look. We can disagree on things and we can be amicable about it.
Let me put it this way.
Without having
No,
to insult.
I'm not going to moral bash you over
Yeah, white
judging
knight is
somebody
a
to be
term I
going to
usually
hell
use.
when it's really
Yeah,
ultimately
it's
not
not
your
my
place.
yeah, it's not my place. But I firmly believe that any religious organization that has gone against the word of God, I believe the people, the individuals that made that decision will be held accountable by God Himself. And so, far be it from me to tell you what God will do. I just happen to looking at precedents.
The blue
I,
light around my monitor needs to be a whole lot brighter. Like, holy crap, I am dark whenever I don't have a lighter tab up on my second screen here.
yeah,
But so
yeah, that's it.
as to Night Shift 10,000, the brobble is what he says. Yeah, Night Shift is like one of the atheist subscribers of my channel.
Well, I
Um,
mean, um, okay.
um,
I
Someone
think atheists
1000.
are. I think atheists are sad. I've
Someone
never found
1000
a happy one.
asks, one of the commandments refers to thou shalt not steal. Is that not true today? I do not know what context you might be asking that. If it's
We were. What I asked you is if the Ten Commandments are still valid today, and you just kind of looked
Oh,
dumbfounded.
well, I would have to go and look back at the specific verses, but I think Jesus essentially talks about thieves as well as murder, adultery, and that sort of stuff. Just not specifically about the Sabbath and eating bacon.
No,
That's
the Ten Commandments are still 100% on. Um, the things like the Talmudic laws, those weren't necessarily brought down 100% from heaven, mind you. Okay, that was the rabbis, for lack of a better, who have made those decisions over time, and so, but the commandments never went away.
so.
I understand there is a difference.
Speaking of commandments, and by the way, I did hear this technicality. There's not just 10 commandments within the Old Testament. There's actually something of over 500 technically. If you want to, like,
There's about there's about 500 different things that were said to you do, but it wasn't necessarily commandments. The Ten Commandments were
some of them were saying that you shall not do this, shall not do that. Like, do not go wearing mixed fabrics. Do not shave yourself if you're a religious leader.
That's all part of Talmudic law.
But nonetheless, it was a commandment given out to the Hebrews at the time, on top of the 10 Commandments. Is my point.
Yeah. There's extra things.
If you don't want to technically call it a commandment, I mean, whatever. It's just
the commandments were pretty.
the way that me and my peers word it.
I hear you. I just I would say the Ten Commandments, the Big Ten, yeah, they're kind of a thing.
But anyway, the big thing here, well, one interesting thing here brought up by Night Shift 10,000. Don't know if you want to address it or not. You probably do. If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and rapes her and they are discovered, he shall pay her father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the young woman, for he has violated. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. So I guess the context for that statement is he's essentially asking, how does that apply to nowadays post Jesus' sacrifice?
You're talking about Talmudic law, not a commandment. Next. I like I said, I don't follow everything in the Talmud. It'd be impossible for me. But I do my best.
Do you think that it should be followed though? Otherwise,
well, I mean,
person is sinning.
If you rape someone, if you totally grape them,
Right. I mean,
marriage, I don't think solves that.
Sure.
I
mean, as a speaking,
I put that right along the lines of pedophilia, and I think I'm pretty clear about where I stood on that one. So,
right.
Yeah, we're not going to really go there.
So purely talking seculars or even like New Covenant law, for that matter, it's still immoral. But the after the raping, you know.
Well, I mean,
is
look,
it not? Wait, is it like not still a sin for if they don't ultimately marry and the rapist pays the father 50 or whatever is the equivalent of 50 shekels nowadays?
when you're talking about that, what you're basically talking about is you're looking at the times of when dowry was a thing, which dowry doesn't really exist here in the West.
So that's why you say
Virginity
it's not a
happens
sin
to
anymore?
be- virginity happens to be kind of a commodity in the time that was written.
So that would be your logic to say ultimately that that's why it's not a sin nowadays?
I never said it wasn't a sin. See, taking the virginity of a woman with ill intention, you shouldn't have sex out of wedlock, in my
Well, that's
opinion.
what I'm trying to get
I
at
actually
here. Do
believe
you
sex out of wedlock is a sin because you
Yes.
are promising love to someone and not delivering it.
I mean,
So-
Jesus in Matthew chapter 5 goes on about that, but nonetheless, is it not still a sin nowadays if a father was not to, give off her daughter to the rapist in a trade of whatever is equivalent of 50 shekels of silver nowadays?
Well, like I said, in the context of time, you're talking about the time of dowries, things that don't exist today. When it comes down to it, the idea of what the actual sin would be, and we're saying, let's say consent is not an issue, right? The idea of having sex out of wedlock would be the sin. Now, actually having sex without consent, I would imagine, would be quite a sin as well. But
So because dowries don't exist nowadays, it is technically not a sin, but if they did exist, it would be a
I
sin.
didn't say that sex out of wedlock is a sin. Period. Stop.
No, I
Period.
understand, but I'm not talking about the rape or the sex outside of marriage. Obviously, I fully acknowledge those are sins. I'm talking about specifically about giving away the rape victim to the rapist for whatever is the equivalent of 50 shekels of silver. How is that not still a sin nowadays, according to Old Covenant law, Messianic Jewish law, whatnot?
Well, rape was wrong. Rape was
No
rape was
shit.
bad even then. Even then, it was considered bad. But the idea of virginity, it was a commodity at the time. So
Honestly,
if
I don't know
you-
if I'm going to get an answer out of this question.
no, you're not really going to get an answer out of this one because it's either the answer that you were looking for I'm not going to give, or it's going to be maybe the way you're wording it is preventing me from answering it in a way that you would deem acceptable. But the way I look at it is taking of the female's virginity, looking at the time period, would be considered almost theft because virginity was a commodity. Because you would have things like a woman would be worth more if she was a virgin. So therefore, the dowry may be different, things like that, because you had to think of the economic implications of marriage back at that time. Today, the act of actually having sex out of wedlock is just as much of a sin now as it was then. The idea of graping someone is even a bigger sin. In fact, even during those times, you could be stoned to death for such things. Paying of the dowry was actually a way of kind of mitigating the charge of grape. So it's a little different. There's nuance to that, but I don't know exactly what direction you're looking for or what exactly you're looking for.
I'm trying
Maybe
to
it's the way you're wording it that I am having issues with. I don't know.
get down to the bottom of how it applies to today and whether or not and how and why it would or would not be a sin for a man to do or not sell off his raped daughter to the rapist for whatever is equivalent to 50 shekels of silver.
I don't think the actual selling of the daughter.
Maybe not selling, but whatever word we want to apply to this.
That's probably this is probably one of the semantic things that are just kind of hanging me up because selling the daughter to the rapist was not a thing.
So the
Okay.
Bible, I will
So the
give
idea-
that it does not use the word sell, but nonetheless, there is 50 shekels of silver given to the father from the rapist so that he can go ahead and marry the raped daughter.
Okay, so like I said, virginity was a commodity, and he was paying for stealing said commodity.
Well, the virginity still exists today, and they can still steal the virginity
today, but it is not held as a commodity as it once was.
So would that be how it's not a sin anymore?
Does not say it. In no way was this ever said it was not a sin. A sin, what a sin was yesterday is a sin today still. Jesus did not negate the law. Jesus was fulfillment of the prophecy. Jesus added to the law, if anything. He actually made it harder for you to sin less.
So if we did live in a society in which that virginity was viewed as much of a commodity as it was back then it would be a sin if the dad wasn't to go along with this certain procedure.
No, sex out of wedlock is a sin. Always has been a sin.
I know. I'm talking about the whole 50 shekels thing.
You're hung up on something that honestly I will never agree to. So I won't even address it. Is the point I'm getting to.
Well, I don't know how to frame it any better, but whatever. Question is,
I don't even know where you're getting that reference from. Like I said, I'm not
the 50. I'm getting it from the Bible verse.
Oh, what Bible verse?
Well, whatever Bible verse that sent one was referring to in regards of the man getting the rapist paying 50 shekels of silver for the raped daughter to the dad.
So I will just basically say sex out of wedlock is a sin. It was a sin back then. It's still a sin now. Nothing has changed.
Okay, I don't know if that's fully the answer that I wanted, but nonetheless.
It's the answer you're going to get. That's where we are.
Okay. However, 1 Samuel 15:3 is super fucked up, says Night Shift. Do you remember off the top of your head what he might be referring to? Maybe I should look it up myself, actually. First. By the way, how's the live chat on your end looking?
Oh, my people are talking here and there. They've slowed down a little bit, but we actually had some pretty decent conversations going on. I'm telling you, man.
Now go
Yeah.
attack the Amalekites. That's the one that's one of them that he's referring to.
What was it? 1 Samuel what?
1 Samuel 15:3.
1 Samuel 15:3. Like I said, I don't really like getting all this stuff on stream.
I don't remember giving a verse. No, I wasn't referring to you sent
Hold
one
on,
1000.
hold on.
I was
Hold on,
referring to Night
What's
Shift.
messed up about this?
What?
What's bad about this?
What's bad about this?
Yeah.
Attacking the Amalekites?
It says, now go and attack Amalekite, completely destroy everything they have. Don't spare them, but kill men and women and children and babies, cows and sheep and camels and donkeys. Yeah. When you go into war, against an unholy enemy, their complete destruction is not only warranted but encouraged. Yeah, it's wipe their existence off the map is what it sounds like. Yeah, that's Old Testament. That's righteous Old Testament God there. It changed. The attitude changed with the coming of Christ.
To where
That
you
was
don't
the-
have to execute a country's
Where you
every
don't
single
fulfill
child
it.
and woman.
Yeah. That is one of the things that did change. Like I said, the evolution of man, the way we foresee things, goes from complete black and white to more nuance. That did change. But you're talking about the Old Testament views that God held versus New Testament. That wasn't a law. That wasn't even a commandment. But that was the viewpoint of God at that time. If you're going to blaspheme, yeah, you destroy everything in sight, yada yada yada. But with the coming of Christ, all that changed. So
I'm just gonna say,
negate the laws. Understand the laws never changed.
I'm just gonna say here, full disclosure to the live chat, I do not know if I would agree with the framing that that AircraftSparky is using, and of course Night Shift. He's yeah, he's all like, what? Seriously? God is literally ordering the murder of everyone, and God is supposed to be just? Well, if that was ordered by God and not just what the Israelites wanted to say.
Yes, Battle Bro. That's exactly. He gave that. He gave that because they screwed over the Israelites.
Literally,
see,
God
here's
orders the butchery
deal.
of women and children and invalids. Is another live chat.
So here's the deal. This is why I don't. This is why I don't argue semantics, especially with atheists. It doesn't matter what I say; they're going to white knight and whatever. Like I said, things changed after the birth of Christ. This is one of the tactics of atheists. This is why they're bad faith debaters when it comes to things. Look, if you don't believe in God, then what are you worried about?
Well, I would say that I find it very questionable, the ordering of executing women and children as well. I mean, obviously,
Like I
being a
said,
Christian,
that
being
we're
a
talking-
mere pleb human here on Earth, I do not have much to say or speak out against God, but from a purely pragmatic point of view, I can't say that I feel so good about that command. Just full context of the live chat. Full disclosure to the live chat. That's what I mean.
I just look at the evolution of God, the how the nuances that came with the advent, with Jesus Christ showing up on scene, with the Son of God showing up. Like I said, the evolution of man and how we actually look at things, the child versus the adolescent versus the adult and the parent. The way that you actually see these different things, the way you see the new lights, the nuances that exist, you actually see that actually with God himself. So we're talking about where prior to the flood, the mere act of pure hedonism that you see in things like Sodom and Gomorrah, they completely wiped out that entire civilization. God turned everyone into salt. And then he flooded the entire earth. And then he said, you know what? I will never flood the earth again to destroy the earth. That's why next time it's coming with fire, I believe, or cold. It's one of the two. But he will not flood the earth. Okay, that was a covenant, and that was given by the sign of the rainbow to Noah. But if you don't believe in God, if you're wanting to try to disprove the existence of God, good luck. Better men have tried. You're fighting a faith, and if you want to sit there and try to shake the faith of the faithful, that doesn't end up well. I'll just throw that out there. Insane things, crazy things have happened in the name of religion. I'm not one of those people though, but I will tell you, man, there's a couple things in the world we don't mess with. Just leaving it there.
So Rusty the Fox Coon, by the way, no, that's not me. That's not the slur against black people. He calls himself Rusty the Fox Coon because he's a merging of a fox and a raccoon. But anyway, he says, yo, I remember when you decided to interview Sparky on this. Glad to see you following up a bit with him. Well, you're welcome. I like seeing his views, even if they differ in places. Glad to see you here, Sparky.
Right on, man. Look, I like sharing my points of view. I don't mind it. I'm not scared of it. A lot of people are, and I understand why, especially in this modern day culture. But you know, there are some things I push back on. I push back on quite vehemently. Like I'll be honest. A self-proclaimed atheist talking about the Bible, I'm not going to engage anymore in that. Just let you know.
Oh, brother. Okay. To each their own. If there are like some people you rule out debating that, you do you.
No, well, it's not a debate. I don't debate chat. Someone who wants to debate will come on camera and will actually show their damn face and they'll talk to me face to face. I don't talk to words.
Oh, okay. So moving along, though, did God really command them to do that, or was that just something they wanted to do? And further extension of that last live chat that I read of Night Shifts, and I think that question was already answered. Pretty much, God did command it. One of the big reasons I became an atheist was after reading the Bible. That was also from Night Shift.
What's up, Galil? How you doing, brother? Yeah, it's look, it's not, and I'm not even trying to insult chat. Okay, here's the deal. If you want to have that discussion, feel free to contact me. I have no problem having these discussions, but to do it live on stream with atheist talking points, I'm not going to engage. That's where, because that's almost like a gotcha thing. So it's, I'm not going to say God was wrong. So if that's what you're looking for, Night Shift, yeah, not going to happen.
Night Shift says, I've already posted what I think it should say, or if I was God, what I would say. If a man rapes a virgin and they are caught, then the rapist shall be seized and the rape victim will choose their fate.
Well,
Fair enough. Not gonna fully disagree with that, although I do think it's kind of edgy to be putting out those "if I was God" sort of scenarios as humans, anyways.
Yeah,
It
I
pretty
would
much
never even
borders
pretend.
on blasphemy.
Yeah, I won't even pretend to go that far. Look, if I was God, I wouldn't be here right now.
You would not
that's
be
where,
chatting with a good old DarkCon.
no, because I'd probably blow your, it would probably make your head explode, and because that's why every time you see God talk to someone, he does it through one of the archangels, right? You ever notice God never actually talks to someone? It's usually like Ezekiel or something like that, talking. Yeah, it's always one of the angels.
But what about the forging of the Ten Commandments at the Mount Sinai?
Well, there are special people in the history of the Bible, and I would hate to even come close to try to equate myself to someone as great as Moses and Noah and David, and yeah, no, I'm not that guy.
That'd be a interesting bit of information if it was like revealed. The reason why God does not approach anybody in physically, as an orb of light or however exactly he would physically show up is because everybody would melt away or explode or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want more on that, just watch Kevin Smith's Dogma. You'll enjoy it and have a laugh at least.
Kevin Smith, isn't that the guy who did Clerks and Clerks 2, or
Exactly who it is.
there's also the guy who did Woke Man, right?
Yeah, but you gotta be quite fair to him because he went vegan. Going vegan does make you insane.
Oof. I do gotta say, Clerks was alright, but Clerks 2 was a whole lot funnier. Just my opinion.
Shut your whore mouth.
Sorry.
Clerks 2 was okay. Clerks 1 was a masterpiece.
I busted a gut at more times in watching Clerks 2 than the first Clerks, personally, so it's whatever, it's subjective opinion. Trying to see if there's any other live chat comments worthy of worthy. I sound like a pompous prick, but yeah, if they're like worth going over. Sorry, guys.
And I think you've gotten a feel for what I'll engage with and what I won't. So, and I appreciate you doing that because I don't want to sound mean or condescending, but there's just some things I don't think I'm the right person for those discussions.
I already said this a little bit earlier, very briefly, Sent 1000, but I wasn't saying that you were giving a verse when you said I don't remember giving a verse. I was meaning Night Shift. If I accidentally said Sent 1000, I take that back. I was meaning Night Shift 10,000 was referring, not quoting the actual verse address, but was just paraphrasing the rhetoric or whatever, the text of the verse about the raped woman and given away to the dead 50 shekels of silver, whatnot.
Yeah, like I've even had people like TJ Kirk actually come and try to talk to me about religion. I'm like, man, I'm not going to play this game.
Oh.
Because I first of all, I don't want to misinform. Okay, I really don't. Okay, I try to give you my honest belief where I stand on a lot of these things and best of my understanding. But I mean, when it comes down to theological deals, I am not a learned man. I'm quite new to a lot of this, and I'm not as studied as I would like to be. I'm not an expert.
I'll
tell you what I believe. That's about where I go.
All right. I think Psalms 144 shows how things supposed to be for battle. I think it's 144, says Samuel 1000. Interesting. I'll have to look back at that passage right there. Rusty the Fox Coon says a god can't be proven or disproven, hence why it's called faith. It's supposed to resonate with you.
That's pretty much where I stand. But I always tell people when they tell me that my God does not exist, I'm like, well, do me a favor and disprove me the existence of God, and maybe I'll believe you. And they always say, well, that can't be disproved, and I'm like, well, okay, well then, look, I'm not fucking with your beliefs. Don't fuck with mine. It's a respect thing. But I always challenge someone to try to definitely go ahead and try to shake my faith by proving God does not exist. And then once they admit you can't disprove the existence of God, I'm like, okay. And then they ask, can you prove God? No, nor would I pretend to. It's on faith.
Yeah, the issue with my faith personally is not so much as to whether or not God exists. I always have felt it in my heart, except for one brief weekend anyways. That was a very bad weekend. That God has existed, but the big question that's always rolled around in my mind was, what exactly does he want? What exactly does he command? And in relation to that is, what exactly are we getting wrong in our translation or interpretation of the Bible verses? And what have we gotten wrong throughout history in translating the various different historical scriptures of God's word, you know?
And that is why Jesus came to be.
So as to make
you to forgive you for your mistakes and your ignorance. That's really what it all boils down to. Because humans are not perfect.
Fair. Sadly, my avatar was a tribute to someone I lost to. It annoys me when people assume it's a hate-filled name, says Rusty the Fox Coon. Sorry to hear that, Rusty.
Is this it, man? Because I'm pushing 3 hours on my end.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just going to get on with it. I'm just going to presume that nothing else was worth addressing. Sorry, guys, that I'm skipping a whole lot of your chat comments. But I guess sort of end this on a little bit more of an uplifting and happy note. Obviously, you, AircraftSparky, you like Warhammer 40k the best when it comes to sci-fi.
Yes. There's something about the dystopian world of Warhammer 40k, the complete zealotry that the soldiers have, and how they would destroy an entire world over something as little as an Audi belly button for the Imperium of Man, that I just find to be hilarious. Coming from a world where I've spent some time in combat, and I find humor in some of the 40k world. Believe it or not, but I also like the artistry. Yes, I do enjoy it. In fact, I will be starting probably here in the next week or so. We'll be starting on Sundays. We're going to be doing a live 40k game, tabletop version.
Oh, I was about to ask, is it Dawn of War?
Well, I have all the Dawn of Wars, and yeah, I play those games.
Would you say that the first one is the best one of those three?
No, the second one.
The second one was not as much RTS, though. Do I have that right?
Well, I mean, right now I'm playing Gattakus, and
basically the second Dawn of War was just a squad tactical command sort of game, as opposed to an actual build your base, train up your army, and wipe out the enemy base sort of RTS game like the first Dawn of War was.
Well, you're looking at just different types of these games. Dawn of War 2 is more of an RPG style RTS than it is an actual straight up RTS.
Right.
Number 3 goes back to the RTS standard. Dawn of War 2 has the higher player base going on right now in the Dawn of War saga. Playing Gattakus right now. It's a fun game. I'm getting ready to start on which one was it I was looking at downloading the other day? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Look, I play Space Marines. I think the Space Marines are funny.
Space Marines, is that an aliens-based game?
No, Space Marines is part of 40K. It's the faction. Of
Oh
40K.
yeah. They had their own Space Marines game. It's where you're playing in third person as a Ultramarine, right?
Yeah. So
Right.
I actually have several emotes on Twitch and on YouTube based off the 40K universe. Of course, off the Dark Angels clan, because that is my favorite clan. My second favorite would be the Black Templars, because they're just amazing and they fucking hate furries, and why not?
But the reason why I sort of asked this is just to get your opinion on what do you think is the best type or category of sci-fi. Obviously, I put Warhammer 40K in the dark sci-fi sort of category.
Well, no, Warhammer 40K is not really a thing of sci-fi as much as it's just a tabletop game. If you want to talk about the best type of sci-fi, in my opinion, I would probably side with the Star Wars, more generic Western type of sci-fi.
So fun sci-fi.
Well, I mean, there's not all fun. There's some dark shit in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, there is, like, especially if you get engaging in the EU. But I go asking this because there's like a poll that I was asking on 3 different social medias, including the Discord server. If you check the polls channel in there, I go asking which sci-fi is the best type of sci-fi: fun sci-fi, idealistic sci-fi, analytical sci-fi, or dark sci-fi. And I go explaining a little bit.
I like the dark dystopian stuff, but that's just me. That's just a personal thing. I have a dark sense of humor. I think you've ran across it several times. You've been upset with it on multiple occasions, because I do have a dark sense of humor and I like to make fun of other people's suffering. It's just who I am. So of course,
but the way that I go,
when it comes to things like, I don't see 40K as sci-fi. I just see it as a fantasy world for a tabletop game. When it comes down, when I look at sci-fi, I think of things such as Firefly, Star Trek, Star Wars, Buck Rogers. We're talking more about the movie universe.
Starship Troopers.
Yeah, Starship Troopers. Yeah, I look at all that, and I mean, if I'm looking at the actual universe that I actually like the best, it would have to be somewhere between Star Wars and Firefly. I think that Starship Troopers is a little bit too fashy for me, and I think Star Trek is a little bit too socialist for me.
You think Starship Troopers is too fascist for you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But yeah, the way that I go defining these different categories, and any of y'all who are like watching this right now, if you go like into my Discord server and check it out yourself, I would appreciate your opinions as well as far as which is the best type of sci-fi. But basically, I define fun sci-fi as being set in a universe that has no real rhyme or reason, but just exists for the sake of pure unadulterated fun and to tell almost purely character-driven stories. And the examples I pull are both Firefly and Star Wars.
Star Wars is literally shows different economic statuses and whatnot. It is actually nothing more than a corporate battle when you break it all down. Same thing with Firefly.
It's mostly in the prequels when it gets into that. The original trilogy, it does not as much get into that. I mean, just keep in mind that some of these can like overlap a little bit, but I'm just talking about as far as what they mainly fit into. And
when you look at the sci-fi universes, I mean, like if you definitely want to throw 40K into it, no one wants to live under 40K. No one.
Right.
Absolutely no one.
Which is why I would not define it as idealistic sci-fi, which is the next category.
I don't even consider it sci-fi. I just consider it fantasy tabletop. It's kind of like D&D.
No. I understand you. Just me personally. I mean, it's definitely a crossover between sci-fi and fantasy. There's a whole lot of magic aspects to it, but there's also star travel, lasers, and aliens and all that stuff.
Well, look, for sci-fi to exist, it also has to have that Western feel to it. Almost every sci-fi that has ever existed, television show, movie, when you look at the sci-fi drama genre, they really should just call it Western and get it over with. Because the whole idea of Star Trek, it's literally exploring. It's Western expansion is all it is. It's just Western expansion set in space. When you look at Firefly, you're looking at economic.
Well, the Western aspects of Firefly are like smack you right in the face, obvious.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
Joss
it's
Whedon
a
made sure to make that
corny.
on the nose. They made sure to make that on the nose, but it is because the biggest criticism of sci-fi is sci-fi does not exist. It is merely Western. That's all. That's all it is. Westerns. So that's where that comes from. It smacks on the nose, and it was a joke in Firefly because Josh Whedon wanted to point out how much sci-fi is a Western, that it doesn't even deserve to be in its own category.
So would you call Starship Troopers a Western?
Starship Troopers is a Western.
I'd disagree with that. Like, I think there's a bit more of an argument to say that there's some Western aspects of Star Trek, but Starship Troopers, not so much.
Okay, so
And as far as
look at
Western
it-
aspects of Star Wars goes, I look purely just at the Mandalorian with anybody that went with that Western feel. Awesome, nice shirt.
yeah, but no, when you look at even Starship Troopers, where the Western thing comes in is the fact that you have an almost an unknown adversary trying to take your land, trying to destroy your land, and that is a common theme in Western, and it's usually portrayed by Indians or Mexicans coming over and trying to stop the expansion of the civilization. So
Well,
that is
if
actually where that comes in.
if
But
somebody,
but it has a fascist feel to it because of the dystopian side of that book. If you actually read the entire book, which is actually there's series, there's actually a whole series based on that. It has a very much more of a Western feel.
an unknown enemy that's coming in to conquer and take over your land, though, like not if we were to like take this to more the real world, we could go off on a limb and say that the Texan-Mexican War was a bit Western and that it literally took place in the West. But
Well-
say if the movie was to be completely about World War II, I would call that more war flick than
Well,
Western. It's not a Western in
look at-
any sort of the fashion at
So,
all.
when you talk about the unknown adversary, where you're talking about during the course of Western expansion, no one knew really much about the tribal Indians in the plains. No one knew much about the Mexican armies and stuff like that existed. They actually thought that they were going out into the wilderness without any other threat than wild animals, and then they ran into these individuals.
Well, right,
And
like
that-
I said,
so
that
that's
I
part of
would
the
say,
Western thing.
that I would say, and I could see it has those Western aspects in it. But I'm just saying, like World War II or other wars that did not have any sort of Western aspects in them, that they have the the element of an unknown enemy trying to conquer you or whatever, and yet I would still call them just plain war flick, not so much Western, not any way Western.
War flick, in my opinion.
Like Saving Private Ryan or Band of Brothers, war flick, not Western.
Well, those are more on the nose, actual historical. So when you have most
Yeah.
of your war flicks are actually historically driven. Most of your westerns are all fantasy. They may have references to actual some events, but it's still all tall tales in history and fiction. I mean, even what we know about Tombstone is mostly false. It's all tall tales and hyperbole.
Well, right, but
Might as well
even
be Paul Bunyan, but with people with guns walking around shooting each other at noon.
of course they'd be based off of real events, but taking
your
other
average war
taking
film-
other subjects that are based off of real events or real subject matter. Say Lincoln, the movie Lincoln. I would not call that technically a war film. I mean, yeah, there was the war going on in the background, but the main aspect of it was the political element and the journey of Lincoln himself. It wasn't so much of a war flick.
And the myth of Lincoln needs to be forgotten.
The myth of
I'm-
Lincoln.
Yeah, Lincoln didn't free a damn slave, never did. Lincoln did nothing in the end to actually free slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation didn't free a single damn slave. The only thing that did free a slave that he did is when he actually signed the 13th Amendment, when that actually became. But beyond that, Lincoln did nothing to free the slaves. He was not an African American Noah or
Well,
Moses or anything like that. He was just he was just a man that was fighting to keep a country together.
Well, the signing of the. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Lincoln myself. I mean, there is a whole lot of questionable and dubious things on his violation of states' rights and suspending of habeas corpus for the biggest examples, anyways. But to be arguing on the slavery front, though, I'd say that the signing of the 13th Amendment really says that he did not do nothing to free
People
slaves.
say that he freed the slaves through the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation never freed a single slave. In fact, what it
I
did
have to
was
look at
justify,
the specific details of that. But
the
go
only
on.
thing it did was justify the North's use of slavery.
Sorry, what?
Yes, the only thing the Emancipation Proclamation did was justify the North's use of slavery.
But eradicated the South's usage of slavery?
Yes, over a land in which Lincoln had absolutely no control over.
Okay, so it was a hypocritical slave freeing, but also slavery enforcing sort of bill.
He had no control over the South. The Confederacy had already succeeded. The only time that when the Emancipation Proclamation was actually drafted was following the North actually retreating back into the North because they lost multiple times. And then Lee had this dumb idea to invade the North. When they invaded the North, that is when the Emancipation Proclamation became an actual document, and it was a rallying cry to actually get more people to join the Union Army, is what that was used for. That's why it was given at Gettysburg. It was part of the Gettysburg Address. It was more of a rallying cry. It gave more focus to people in the North who wanted to abolish slavery, because ultimately the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery at the beginning. It had everything to do.
But slavery was the rallying cry, is what you're saying.
Slavery was a rallying cry that eventually got enough people to join the Union Army following the Southern invasion into the North. So there's people who would argue, and I'm not one of them, but there are historians that will argue that the Confederacy would probably still exist today had Lee never decided to invade the North. If he went strictly on a defensive campaign, the Confederacy, the United States would have never reunited.
I thought the war had happened like well before he had actually taken aside Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee was actually sought after by Lincoln.
Or are you talking about a different Lee?
No.
You're talking about the same Lee?
Yes.
Okay.
Robert E. Lee was sought after by Lincoln to be the commander of the Union Army. And he decided to go with the Confederate side because he had family in the Confederacy Army. He did not own slaves or anything like that. But that's a complete other story.
There was a documentary that I listened to that was explaining his motives were of when that the North like burned his house down and almost got a hold of his family. That's what motivated him to take a side.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up to get all the anecdotes together, but no, Lincoln actually tried to recruit Robert E. Lee to be a general in the Union Army.
Right, and Robert E. Lee was all like, "Fuck both of you guys, I'm not joining this," and then the Union was all like, "Burn his house down." Oh, fuck the North. Hey, South, you still want me?
I love this in my chat. Everything being said here will make leftists lose it. Yeah, pretty much. And of course, I'm not sitting there defending Lee or the Confederacy. I'm just saying, had the South not actually invaded the North, had they not gone into Pennsylvania, had they not fought at Gettysburg, had they not tried to capture, because ultimately the idea was to capture D.C., had they not went about that route, the Confederacy might still exist today.
Yeah,
because
nobody
the Confederacy was winning. The Confederacy was winning, hands down, until they invaded the North.
But yeah, nobody is justifying slavery for anybody who is not an idiot would have already got that, and nobody is necessarily justifying the South's existence. Although me personally, I have to say that Robert E. Lee, he was at least one of the more respectable generals in the war.
And Lee is still, his tactics are still taught in military academies today. Someone asked in your chat, the South did have slaves. By a libertarian standpoint, wouldn't the South be worse as slavery is a violation of the AP? I said, well, then so would the North. The North actively had slaves throughout the Civil War. In fact, slaves were freed in the South. All slaves were freed in the South long before they were in the North. So take that for what it is. Juneteenth was the last time there was a Southern slave actually waking up as a slave in the South. But until the passage of the 13th Amendment, slavery still existed in the northern colonies of Virginia, and I'm talking about Portsmouth, over in Kentucky, and Maryland, and Delaware. I think the last slaves were actually freed in Delaware. And that would have been December of 1965, I think, when the 13th was actually signed, something like that.
So, quick question, and then I think this is where we're going to end it off
My
at. I
source
wanted
bill
to.
is very simple. One moment. The source is very simple. If you read the Emancipation Proclamation in the very center, it actually lays out every place that slavery is authorized in the North. So just throw that out there, and then you can follow that up by going through the actual going through and just looking at the history of those areas around that time period, and that'll tell you. But yeah, slavery ended in the South well before it did the North. Go ahead and finish up, bud.
Yep, so I meant to like end this live stream off on a more funner topic, that being of sci-fi, but then we gone talking about how sci-fi it kind of needs that Western element, and then we gone into talking about real life documentaries or docu-movies or whatever, and talking about Lincoln, and then Sparky was all like Lincoln should not be idolized or whatever exact wording he used, and now here we are, folks. But nonetheless, this is where we're going to end it off. Just very quickly, out of curiosity, do you think that Juneteenth is should be recognized as a holiday?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I have no problem with it. I don't know why anyone would.
Yeah, I personally don't agree with it. Or, excuse me, I don't disagree. My bad. So we're going to take that out of context, too.
Important.
What?
Actually, ooh, man, I've got some great clips to make from this one. Man, brother, I can make you look really bad. I'm not going to do it, though, because I'm a nice guy, or pretend to be one, at least.
You just take a clip and say, oh my gosh, DarkCon does not agree with Juneteenth being a thing.
Here comes the Twitter clips.
But anyway, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think Juneteenth should be a thing. My only thing is that I am somewhat sympathetic with the Ben Shapiros of the world and everyone else who goes saying that it's kind of bad timing, because the timing of it feels like pandering to BLM.
No, it was all pandering. Don't get it wrong. I'm not saying it wasn't pandering. I just am kind of apathetic and like, yeah, why shouldn't we celebrate that?
Okay. I just think that it probably should have been a thing a longer time ago than it is now.
I can agree with that.
On that note, y'all, thank you all for joining and joining in the live chat of when you did, even though that it wasn't as active as I thought it was. I thought this live stream was gonna blow up, but nonetheless, it is what it is. But for everybody on the Twitch side of things, I am the Dark Conservatarian. You can find me on YouTube. I probably ought to start myself a Twitch channel so that I can like do multi-platform streaming and whatnot. But primarily, I'm just on YouTube. I am the Dark Conservatarian on YouTube. I'm also DarkCon Entertainment on YouTube. That's my secondary channel. And AircraftSparky, what do you want to say to everybody as far as shilling goes and whatnot?
Well, I mean, of course, you can always find me on Twitch or YouTube. It's going to be youtube.com/AircraftSparky or over at twitch.tv/AircraftSparky. And of course, you can find me in all kinds of places. Just Google the freaking name AircraftSparky. I bet you'll find some stuff. I talk about politics on YouTube. Mostly I do cultural stuff over on the Twitch side. I try to do a little bit more comedy, a little bit more fun. And tomorrow I'm going to be drawing cartoons because, well, I'm getting ready to start a live action cartoons series over there. where we
Live
would be
action
talking about-
cartoon? Wait, that's kind of contradictory or oxymoronic.
No, it isn't, because if you have some programs such as Character Animator where you could sit there and do this, and you could actually make a cartoon movie.
That's motion capture though.
Yeah, it's real live. It's live action cartoon. So yeah, I'll be doing that. I'll be doing that here pretty soon, where I'll be interviewing people more along the lines of something like a Space Coast, Coast to Coast style.
Just wait, everybody. AircraftSparky is going to reboot the motion capture way of making movies, and this time it ain't gonna be as uncanny valley as it was with, say, Polar Express or Mars Needs Moms. Excuse me.
I'll tell you this: if I actually get into stop motion animation, oh man, I wouldn't mind doing claymation, but I don't have the patience for it, and it would probably be way too pornographic for anything that would ever be allowed on anything on social media, just because, well, I have kind of a fucked up sense of humor. But yes, I will be throwing commies out of helicopters. I will be destroying orcs, who will be all socialists or orcs in my opinion. So I will treat socialists with the disdain that they deserve. You will see me destroy furries. We will actually cut them in half and all kinds of things, because fuck furries. Yes, we will make fun of everything cultural, and it will be
Why
disrespectful.
Why fuck furries? I mean, we don't want them to fuck us, so why fuck them?
Well, when I say fuck furries, I mean in a completely dismantling way that actually makes them where they don't exist anymore.
Oh,
Because
fuck
I'll tell
them
you this.
up. That's different
Yes.
from fucking.
Because it's pretty much like this.
We will stage and we will Utah until there is nothing left.
Now do my ass.
Fucking degeneracy, I swear.
So
I am going to do a live action motion capture, whatever you want to call it, cartoon, where I am sitting there as a dark angel, talking to you, making dumb jokes, shooting people in the face, and making fun of individuals as I interview them, and they have no clue while I'm asking these irreverent questions. It is going to be fun. So go find that over on twitch.tv/AircraftSparky. Make sure to become a subscriber there so you can get my whole plethora of emotes. I have 40K style emotes you can use all over Twitch. And of course, if you become a member over my YouTube channel, you get access to most of those, including a fucks none given emoji. That looks like a Fox News deal. But yeah, that's what I got. Thank you for hosting me there, Dark Conservatarian. Probably didn't get all the answers you want, but hey, you got more than most. So
it was a very good live stream nonetheless, and it just got better and better as we gone along. I like
right
that.
on.
But
Last time we streamed, you called me an asshole, and now you're like, oh, he's not bad for a white guy.
No. The last time we were actually having fun with the last 30 minutes of that live stream. You're talking about the last one, way back in 2019.
yeah, that was an interesting one. If y'all want to see utter disdain, if you want to see DarkCon just kind of getting ready to just like take a shit on the camera itself because you just don't want to be there anymore, go and look that one up. That one was funny. And the whole time I'm just sitting there laughing because I'm a troll.
If you want to hear AircraftSparky here say that I am like Cenk Uygur, when I think that's a bit of projection because he looks more like him than I do, then go ahead and watch that live stream as well.
Did I say you sounded like Cenk?
Something like that. You were all like, you're having a Cenk Uygur approach to evidence. Where's my statistics? Of course.
Of course.
That was your impersonation. Yeah. But anyway, so on that note, I am going to say right now, folks, I will probably be on my secondary channel, DarkCon Entertainment, doing a little bit of hangout streaming, maybe doing a bit of gaming, probably hanging out in my Discord voice chat if anybody is even still awake and still wants to chat. But maybe not, I don't know. But if I'll send the link out, obviously, if I have made a decision on yes, that is what I'll do. But I am your host of the YouTube side of things anyways, the Dark Conservatarian, and this is my host, AircraftSparky. Thank you all for joining. Good night, have a good weekend, and